Chapter 434. Actually, both Xuanhuan and Liemo had sensed this as well, but they hadn't paid much attention to it. Now, however, it had caught their attention. Let's go. We can't stay here for long, Xuanfeng urged. Xuanfeng reached out to help Liemo up, but the moment his hand touched Liemo frowned and moved away. Xuanfeng didn't seem to mind Liemo's actions. He walked in front, with Xuanhuan supporting Liemo and following behind. Before long, the three of them were suddenly engulfed in flames. The flames surrounded the three of them in a circle, and in the blink of an eye, they were as tall as a grown man. Xuanhuan tried to leap out of the flames with Liemo in tow, but the flames quickly closed in on them, forcing them back. The three of them were completely engulfed by the flames. Will the flames burn the two of them to death? Thunderous Baishan's gaze landed on the formation. Through it, he and Thunderous Flame could see what was happening within. It's an illusion, Thunderous Flame commented as he manipulated the formation. Father, are you saying that the flames surrounding them are fake? Not exactly. They're flames formed by the spiritual energy within the formation, but they'll only harm their minds. They definitely won't be burned to death, Thunderous Flame replied. Just as Xuanhuan and Liemo were reveling in their glee, a hole suddenly appeared in the barrier of fire surrounding Xuanhuan and Liemo. Xuanhuan had cleaved a large hole in the barrier with Qi Tong. Qi Tong was a fire-attuned spiritual energy user, and the flames within the illusion were clearly no match for Qi Tong. Father, they actually managed to escape. Thunderous Flame's eyes narrowed as he made a series of hand seals. As soon as Xuanhuan and Liemo escaped, countless ice swords flew out from the void in front of them. Xuanhuan stood in front of Liemo, using Qi Tong as a wall. The ice swords melted into nothingness as soon as they came into contact with Qi Tong. Xuanfeng, what are you doing? Come and help. Xuanhuan called out. Xuanfeng unsheathed his sword, but his eyes suddenly darkened. He thrust the sword at Liemo's back. With a clang, Xuanfeng's sword didn't strike Liemo. Instead, it struck Liemo's azure light sword. Liemo used all his strength to push Xuanfeng back. Xuanfeng, what are you doing? At that moment, Xuanfeng seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. He raised his sword and stabbed at Liemo once more, the last bit of spiritual energy in Liemo's body having been depleted. As Xuanhuan dealt with the ice arrows in front of her, she released fireballs to stop Xuanfeng. However, those fireballs couldn't stop Xuanfeng. He blocked the fireballs and stabbed toward Liemo and Xuanhuan with a murderous expression. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind Xuanfeng. With a poochie sound, the tip of a sword appeared in Xuanfeng's chest. Xuanfeng. Xuanhuan looked at the slowly collapsing Xuanfeng, her heart aching. She hadn't expected Xuanfeng to suddenly attack them, much less be killed. They had gone through countless life and death situations together, and they had promised to return to the Xianhuan continent together. Xuanhuan's heart trembled, and she slowed down in her attempts to block the ice swords. A few of them broke through her defenses, but Liemo saw them in time and pulled her away. A figure flashed in front of them and the person who had just killed Xuanfeng appeared in front of them. A black shield appeared in his hand and he blocked all the ice swords in front of him. Hurry up and leave this place. This is the eye of the formation, the person called out. Xuanhuan finally shifted her gaze from Xuanfeng's corpse to the person who had spoken. Xuanfeng? What's going on? Hurry up and leave with me. Xuanfeng clearly didn't have much time to explain, and he continued to retreat with his shield in hand. As they retreated, the number of ice swords dwindled until they completely disappeared. Xuanfeng, what's going on? Xuanhuan asked. This is an illusion. Xuanfeng put away his shield. That was an illusion created by the formation. Thank goodness you made it in time or Yen'er and I would have been in danger. When Xuanfeng had tried to approach Liemo had discovered that the Xuanfeng they had met earlier was a fake, so he had been guarding his back against a sneak attack. This formation has many eyes, some of which represent life, while others represent death, Xuanfeng explained. Just now you walked to the door of death where there are many traps. If we walk to the door of life, will we be able to escape? Xuanhuan probed. No. Xuanfeng shook his head. We're currently on the door of life, and the door of life only represents safety. Without a way to escape, the three of them rested where they were. Xuanhuan gave Liemo the spirit-grade crystal she had on her, and after about half a day, Liemo's nearly empty spiritual vortex was finally filled with a third of spiritual energy. Liemo opened his eyes and looked around. Xuanhuan was right beside him, cultivating, and Xuanfeng wasn't far away, his eyes also half closed. As if sensing Liemo's gaze, Xuanfeng opened his eyes, and their gazes met briefly before moving away. After confirming that there was no immediate danger, Liemo closed his eyes and continued cultivating. As they rested, the demonic spirit's voice rang out in Zhuo Yifeng's mind. "Kid, I'm the only one who can help you escape from this place. What are you hesitating for? Do you want to be trapped here forever? Or will the people behind the Thunder Father and Son come out to capture you?" "Shut up," Zhuo Yifeng ordered. "Don't expect me to compromise until the very last moment." "Oh, there's something I almost forgot to tell you," the demonic spirit continued. "The door of life and the door of death are constantly shifting. Perhaps the door of life you're in right now will become the door of death." Zhuo Yifeng's brows furrowed deeply. The door of life and the door of death could actually shift? Seeing that Zhuo Yifeng was ignoring him, the demonic spirit finally quieted down. Zhuo Yifeng, however, didn't dare to relax in the slightest. Although he kept his eyes closed, he released his spiritual sense to the fullest extent possible. "Father, it's already daybreak and the first elder will be here soon." Both Thunderflame and Thunderflame hadn't slept the entire night. Thunderflame had been practicing hand seals by the array, and Thunderflame had been observing from the side. The situation of those who had escaped from the door of death was still reflected in the array. "Father, if we don't capture them by the time the first elder arrives, we won't be able to explain ourselves," Thunderflame said worriedly. Thunderflame smiled. "There's no way they'll be able to escape now. I've already gathered all the doors of death in the array and moved them to their current position. They won't be able to escape even if they grow wings." As he spoke, he formed a series of hand seals. The three people in the array sensed the anomaly at the same time, and they opened their eyes simultaneously. In the blink of an eye, the small tremors became earth-shaking. Flames, ice swords, vines, sand, and pebbles surged toward the three of them. The three of them quickly closed in. Zhuo Yifeng used his shield to block the incoming attacks, while Liemo and Yun Ruoyan, who had recovered quite a bit, used their spiritual swords to block the incoming attacks. The three of them formed an impenetrable defense. With a loud crack, a large fissure suddenly appeared beneath their feet. The three of them reacted quickly, and sword light shone from beneath their feet as they floated above the fissure. However, the fissure immediately produced a suction force that pulled the three of them into it. Yun Ruoyan looked down at the blood-red magma gushing out of the fissure. The steam that was spewing out of the fissure was extremely real. Even though she knew that this was an illusion, she knew that if they really fell into it, it wouldn't be any better than dying on the spot. However, the suction force grew stronger and stronger. Coupled with the incessant attacks around them, the three of them were unable to defend themselves in time, and they suffered some injuries. Because of the spiritual barrier and the shield's protection, they didn't suffer any major injuries. However, as time passed, they wouldn't be able to hold out. "How about it, little fellow? Do you still not agree to my suggestion?" The demon spirit's voice rang out in Zhuo Yifeng's mind once more. "As long as you and I are completely fused, my strength will be fully unleashed through you, and escaping from this illusion will be as easy as flipping a hand. Fusing with me will not only save your own life, but the lives of your two friends as well. Time is precious, so you'd best not hesitate any longer. If I die, you'll disappear with me." "I know of another way to help me escape," Zhuo Yifeng replied. "I do have a way," the demon spirit replied. "But if you don't fuse with me, I'll only save you, and the woman you love will disappear from this place forever. In any case, you've never been in her heart, so you don't have to care." Zhuo Yifeng gritted his teeth and finally relented. "All right, I agree to your conditions." "Ah, you're indeed a man who values friendship." The demon spirit was overjoyed. "Father, they definitely won't be able to escape this time." Thunderclap Badian exclaimed as he watched the three of them struggle to survive the attacks and the suction force of the fissure. "Wait until I give them the final straw." After saying that, Thunderflame formed a series of hand seals. However, before the hand seals could take effect, something unexpected happened. Zhuo Yifeng's hands suddenly glowed with a black light, and he grabbed at the air, tearing a hole in it. The hole grew larger and larger until it became a door. "Quick, escape from here!" Zhuo Yifeng shouted to the two people behind him. Chapter 435. Zhuo Yifeng. Yun Ruoyan was shocked to see that Zhuo Yifeng had managed to tear through space with his bare hands. Liemo was just as shocked. "I can't hold on for much longer. Let's go!" Zhuo Yifeng shouted. Yun Ruoyan and Liemo glanced at each other, suppressing all the shock and confusion in their hearts as they stepped through the opening Zhuo Yifeng had created. Zhuo Yifeng followed them out of the illusory realm. How is this possible? How could they have broken through the first elder's illusion? Thunderflame was so shocked that his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when he saw the three figures suddenly appear on the array formation. At the same time, Yunruoyan, Liemo, and Zhuifeng all turned to look at the three youths. Thunderflame and his son, it looks like we'll finally be able to settle this once and for all, Yunruoyan declared. Sui Badian recovered from his shock and whispered to Thunderflame beside him, "Father, they must have a very powerful spiritual artifact on them that can destroy spirit arrays." Thunderflame agreed with this explanation. He could see that even though Zhuifeng's cultivation had broken through the Great Circle Realm, tearing through space was something that even he, a level 3 Great Circle Realm cultivator, couldn't do, let alone a level 1 Great Circle Realm cultivator like him. "Let's settle this once and for all," Thunderflame replied casually. Both he and Thunderflame had high cultivations, and even if they couldn't completely defeat the three youths in front of them, they would at least be able to escape unscathed. Moreover, the first elder looked up at the sky. The first elder of the silver dragons would be arriving soon. As long as the two of them were trapped, then the first elder would be able to capture them alive with ease. The two of them had only exchanged a few words when a blur flashed past Yunruoyan and Liemo. Liemo frowned slightly, because he could feel a cold aura emanating from that blur. Zhuifeng and Thunderflame had already begun fighting. The black whip in Zhuifeng's hand was like a dark serpent from hell. It wrapped around Thunderflame's body, biting and twisting around him. In just a few moves, Thunderflame was forced back repeatedly, unable to retaliate at all. Yunruoyan's original plan was to team up with Zhuifeng to deal with Thunderflame, so that Liemo could directly suppress Thunderflame, and the three of them could then work together to defeat Thunderflame. As far as Yunruoyan was concerned, she didn't even need to mention this plan. Based on their mutual understanding, Liemo and Zhuifeng had naturally thought of it as well. However, when she saw how Zhuifeng was forcing Thunderflame into a corner and how Thunderflame was unable to intervene at all, she felt that this was truly unexpected. Zhuifeng's entire body was shrouded in a cold, sinister aura that was both familiar and foreign to Yunruoyan. It was similar to the ghost chi of a ghost, but it was much more powerful and strange. Not only that, but Zhuifeng's killing intent soared to the heavens. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with a thirst for blood and slaughter. Yunruoyan couldn't imagine what he must have been through to be in such a state. Liemo grabbed Yunruoyan's hand to prevent her from acting rashly under the influence of the demonic dragon's blood. Compared to Yunruoyan, Liemo wasn't as shocked by Zhuifeng's actions. Recalling the strange reactions he had felt from Zhuifeng recently, he began to have some ideas. Zhuifeng must have been acting strangely for a long time. From the looks of it, he must have been influenced by the demonic cultivators. In Liemo's heart, there was no such thing as good or evil. As long as one wasn't evil, he didn't mind being unorthodox. It wasn't just Liemo and Yunruoyan who were shocked by Zhuifeng's appearance. Seeing that Thunderflame was being forced back step by step, Thunderflame had initially wanted to step in and help, but now he was afraid. In the face of absolute power, he was afraid for the first time. Thunderflame's trying to escape. Yunruoyan saw Thunderflame slowly moving toward the cave's entrance from the corner of her eye, and she subconsciously took out Scarlet Eye. "I'll deal with him," Liemo said. "Protect yourself." In a flash, Liemo appeared behind Pai Badian, blocking the entrance to the cave. Thunderflame was naturally no match for Liemo. Although he was a second-rank sword saint, he had been stuck at the early stages of second rank. Liemo, on the other hand, had long since surpassed him and reached the peak of second rank. A peak blade master against an early-rank blade master, coupled with Liemo's own bloodline advantage, was enough to crush Thunderflame. Just as Liemo restrained Thunderflame, Thunderflame was finally unable to defend himself against Zhuifeng's attack. His sword was wrapped up by Zhuifeng's black whip. Thunderflame gripped the hilt of his sword as tightly as if it were a life-saving straw. Zhuifeng's black aura surged, and Thunderflame felt a strange, powerful spiritual energy flow from his whip to his sword, then into his spiritual vortex. Thunderflame spat out a mouthful of blood as his spirit sea trembled violently. "If you're not Zhuifeng, who are you?" Thunderflame wanted to let go of the Thunderbolt divine sword in his hand, but he found that he couldn't break free from the strange spirit energy. The moment the spirit energy in his spiritual sea came into contact with the strange spirit energy, it would immediately become one with it. Thunderflame was horrified to find that the person in front of him was assimilating his spirit energy and absorbing his life force. "Who am I?" The demon spirit, which had already fused with Zhuifeng, spoke in a cold voice. "Do you little things think you're worthy of knowing my name?" As it spoke, the demon spirit increased its absorption, and Thunderflame's body began to shrivel up at a rate visible to the naked eye. If you're not Zhuo Yifeng, who are you? It was Yun Ruoyan who asked this question. Zhuo Yifeng turned back to look at Yun Ruoyan, his eyes shrouded in black mist staring straight at her. Yun Ruoyan's heart suddenly shook, and her divine sense also shook. Extremely bloody scenes kept appearing in Yun Ruoyan's mind. In the scene, ghostly qi lingered, and the silver and black dragon bodies kept tumbling about, fighting each other. Fresh blood splattered everywhere in the black ghost qi. I remember now, I finally remember now. An old man's voice suddenly rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind. Mistress, it's the Feilai blade. Its spirit is trying to break free of its seal. Qiuqiu's voice rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind. The Feilai blade. Yun Ruoyan endured the agitation of both her spiritual vortex and her mind. The Feilai blade was a spiritual weapon that she had picked up from a glacial lake, and the First Elder had sealed it within her body. The First Elder had told her that she would only be able to break free of its seal once she became a peak blade master, but she hadn't expected that it would attempt to break free of its own seal today. On the other side, just as Thunderflame was about to be sucked dry by the demon spirit, a beam of light suddenly shot out from his palm. Thunderflame's withered and lifeless face finally shone with the light of life. Thunderflame used the last bit of spiritual energy he had left to summon the sky-turning mirror. It flew into the air, and a pillar of light shot out of it, revealing a silver-white elder. First Elder, save us. Thunderflame and Thunderflame begged the silver dragon elder at the same time. However, the First Elder's gaze was fixated on Zhuo Yifeng, meeting his eyes, which were shrouded in black energy. After a few breaths, the silver dragon elder finally opened his mouth. Demon spirit, you're still alive? Ha ha ha. Zhuo Yifeng let out a cold, arrogant, and slightly angry laugh. You're not dead yet, so how could I bear to let you perish like that? It's been 1,000 years and you've aged quite a bit. Save me. Thunderflame cried for help once more. Under the demon spirit's relentless absorption, all that was left of him was a skeleton. The silver dragon elder's gaze swept across Thunderflame's body. You're useless now. I'll send you on your way. With that, the silver dragon elder waved a hand in Thunderflame's direction. An icy blue spark flew into Thunderflame's body, and with a soft bang, Thunderflame was reduced to a pile of ash. Father. Thunderbolt Badian cried out in pain as he watched his father turn into ashes in the blink of an eye. You might still be of some use. The silver dragon elder's gaze landed on Thunderflame's body, then he extended a hand to Liemo. Liemo felt a huge suction force from the silver dragon elder's hand, pulling both Thunderflame and Thunderflame toward him. Liemo couldn't resist this suction force, so he loosened the shackles on Pai Badian. Pai Badian was sucked toward the silver dragon, while Liemo stabbed his sword into the ground to stabilize himself. Just as Thunderflame was about to fall into the silver dragon elder's hands, the demon spirit whipped out a black whip and wrapped it around one of Thunderflame's legs. This little thing has offended a friend of mine, so I have to kill him, the demon spirit declared. Mo Ling said. Then he pulled back the black whip in his hand. There was a sound of flesh tearing, followed by a low cry of pain. One of his legs had been torn off by the black whip. After tearing off Thunderflame's leg, the demon spirit once again whipped out a black whip at Thunderflame. The silver dragon elder was prepared for this, and he extended his spiritual barrier to Thunderflame's body. The black whip was pierced by the demon spirit's spiritual energy, but it didn't pierce through the barrier. The two of them were in a stalemate. Haha. Suddenly an old man's laughter rang out. How could I miss out on such a lively occasion? Both the demon spirit and silver dragon turned in the direction of the sound. A black shadow shot out from Yun Ruoyan's forehead, transforming into a black, semicircular spiritual weapon that stopped by Yun Ruoyan's side. This was the Feilai blade, which had been sealed by the First Elder. Sitting cross-legged on top of it was the sword spirit, the old man who had lost his memory. Chapter 436. It's you, Patriarch Demonic Dragon, the demon spirit and the silver dragon elder exclaimed in unison. You actually, haha, that's right, I didn't perish either. The elder sitting cross-legged on the Feilai blade exclaimed. It looks like the heavens aren't too cruel to the demonic dragon clan after all, to spare my life. Back then we sacrificed the Skyspan mirror, but we didn't manage to kill you. The silver dragon elder and Mo Ling lowered their hands at the same time. Both of them looked at the demon dragon patriarch with vigilance. The demon spirit waved his hand and tossed the half-dead Thunderbolt Badian into a corner. Liemo walked up to Yun Ruoyan's side. Both of them could tell that something was amiss, and they tacitly retreated to the side, trying to reduce their presence as much as possible as they watched the situation unfold with suspicion. The demon dragon ancestor looked at the demon spirit and coldly said, "Wang, I trusted you so much in the past and asked for your help. Yet, you and the silver dragon worked together to lure me into an illusion and then killed me. Fortunately, I relied on the Phalai blade to escape. Why do you two still want to work together today? I'm afraid that without your schemes, it won't be easy to defeat me again." As the demon dragon ancestor spoke, he formed a seal with both hands. The moment the seal was formed, a gust of wind rose around him. Violent spiritual power poured out from the seal formed by his hands. "Oh no, it's the demonic dragon art." Zhuo Yifeng's expression changed. "Patriarch demonic dragon, let's talk this out. Even if we're going to fight, let's make things clear first." The silver dragon elder didn't look any better. He was already holding the skyspan mirror in his hand, ready to fight at any moment. "The demonic dragon art," Xuanhuan murmured to herself. "Is this the technique I started cultivating?" Just from the reaction of the demon spirit and the silver dragon elder, it was clear that the demonic dragon art was going to be a powerful technique, and that she had only cultivated a small part of it. "All right, then I'll listen to your explanation before we fight." The demon dragon ancestor clasped his hands together and stopped making gestures. The array formation in front of him also disappeared instantly. The violent wind and the violent spiritual power disappeared at the same time. The demonic soul said, "Back then, it was this old man silver dragon who lured me with holy water. That's why I betrayed my friends. However, I didn't expect that after he destroyed you, he went back on his word. Not only did he not share the holy water with me, he even tried to kill me. Just as you said, old brother, fortunately the heavens have eyes. Although my body was destroyed, my spirit was covered by the devil's whip. I was stranded in a low-level continent and only saw the light after 1,000 years. Brother, I'm a victim too, right?" "Humph, what a good victim." The silver dragon elder continued, "Back then, you were the one who unintentionally found out about the holy water and took the initiative to cooperate with me. To think that I was the one who seduced you. You demons are really shameless." "What nonsense are you talking about? When did I ever ask you to cooperate with me?" Mo Ling retorted. Then he looked at Mo Long ancestor and said sincerely, "Brother, don't listen to him. Both of us were harmed by him. I was just seeking justice from him. Brother, it just so happens that I can count you in as well." The great ancestor of the demon dragon frowned and asked coldly, "What is the holy water that you keep talking about?" This question startled the demon spirit, but he immediately reacted and said, "Brother, you still don't know what the holy water is even now. The holy water is extracted from the bloodline of your demonic dragon clan. It can heal, regenerate, and even be an elixir that can cause death. Although the demon dragon clan and the silver dragon clan have always been at odds, they have been in harmony for nearly 1,000 years. It was the silver dragon clan that discovered that the blood in your body has the effect of reviving the dead. Therefore they plan to destroy you and refine your descendants into holy water." "I see." The demon dragon ancestor suppressed his anger and looked at the silver dragon elder. The silver dragon elder looked at the demonic soul. The demonic soul revealed everything he had done, which further aroused the hatred of the demon dragon ancestor. The silver dragon elder calmly looked at the possessed Zhuo Yifeng and said, "Mo Ling, there is something that even you don't know." What is it? Do you have some other scheme?" "About the holy water, you only know part of it. After 1,000 years of continuous refining, I finally refined the holy water of immortality. In the past, the holy water could heal and bring the dead back to life. But now, not only can it bring the dead back to life, but it can also make you immortal," the silver dragon elder said. The silver dragon clan is far more cunning than the demon clan. The lifespan of this world has always been limited. Where did you get immortality? I have never heard of it, and you dare to use it to trick me? You are really old and thick-skinned." The demonic soul did not believe him. It was common knowledge that the lifespan of cultivators was longer than that of mortals. But whether it was decades or centuries, there was still a limit to one's lifespan. No one had ever reached the realm of immortality, so the demonic soul did not believe what the silver dragon elder said. "I'm not lying. I am the best proof," the silver dragon elder said. The silver dragon elder said, "You've only lived for 1,000 years because you've attached your soul to a spiritual weapon, but I've lived for 1,000 years with my body. I've already mastered the holy water of immortality." The silver dragon elder looked at the demonic soul and threw him another olive branch. "As long as you and I work together to completely destroy the demon dragon ancestor, I will give you the holy water. Not only can it help you become immortal, but it can also help you rebuild your body. Although this body of yours has completely fused with you, it's still not your own. How about it? Do you want to consider it? The Silver Dragon Elder's words tempted the demonic soul. Immortality and rebuilding his body were things he had always dreamed of, but he had never dared to think about it. Although he was tempted, he did not act rashly. The Silver Dragon Elder's words were too far-fetched for the demonic soul. Are you trying to tempt me again and then kill me again? I won't fall for the same trick twice. As Xuanhuan listened to the conversation between the three, her gaze inadvertently landed on Pai Badian, who was sitting in a corner. He still had one leg, but he was still alive. Xuanhuan's gaze landed on the finger of his left hand. Lin Qingqian's ring was still on his finger. Xuanhuan wanted to retrieve the ring immediately, but she suppressed that urge. The three men in front of her were clearly not on the same level as her and Liu Mo, and if she accidentally attracted the attention of any one of them, they could easily kill both of them with a wave of their hands. It was best to be cautious. In the corner, however, Pai Badian didn't want to stay put any longer. In fact, he hadn't fainted at all. He had only feigned death to save his own life. Now that the three of them weren't paying any attention to him, he wanted to take the opportunity to escape. However, he only had one leg and it was still bleeding profusely. If he didn't stop the bleeding in time, he would die from excessive blood loss. Although his current situation was dire, Pai Badian still felt a sliver of relief. He still had the bottle of holy water in his storage ring. Feeling dizzy, Pai Badian didn't even have the strength to crawl. Unable to care about anything else, he took out the bottle of holy water and gulped it down. The moment Pai Badian drank the holy water, the Silver Dragon Elder felt its spiritual energy. He extended a hand in Pai Badian's direction, and the bottle of holy water in Pai Badian's hand flew into his hand. However, Pai Badian had already drunk all of the holy water. This is the holy water I bestowed upon that man, and he drank it all. The Silver Dragon Elder tilted the bottle down, revealing that not a single drop was left. Now you can see for yourselves the power of the holy water, the Silver Dragon Elder continued. All of them turned to look at Pai Badian, who was still in the corner. Black scales were crawling out of the wound on his leg, becoming thicker and thicker until they formed the shape of a leg. That's the innate gift of rebirth, the Silver Dragon Elder exclaimed. Silver Dragon, you've really turned my children into holy water. The Silver Dragon Elder glared angrily at the Silver Dragon Elder. Then he waved his hand at Pai Badian, and the scales that had just formed the shape of a leg spontaneously combusted. Ah, my leg, my leg. Pai Badian screamed in pain, and the flames from the scales quickly spread to his entire body. He kept rolling on the ground in an attempt to extinguish the flames, but the flames grew bigger and bigger. In the end, Pai Badian turned into a fireball and stopped moving. When the fireball was extinguished, all that was left was a human-shaped charcoal. What a powerful demonic dragon fire! The Silver Dragon Elder said as he looked at the demonic spirit again. The holy water is real. You saw it just now. As long as we work together to kill the demonic dragon great ancestor again, I will give you the holy water to regenerate your physical body. This time the demon spirit is really tempted. The Silver Dragon Elder's eyes darted back and forth between the Silver Dragon and the demonic dragon. Do you really think that you can kill me by working together? The demonic dragon Elder sneered. 1,000 years ago, if you didn't trap me in an illusion and use the 3 mirrors at the same time, do you think you can kill me? Demon spirit, I'm afraid you're not fated to get the holy water that the Silver Dragon Elder spoke of. Demon spirit, don't be scared by him. The Silver Dragon Elder said, no matter how powerful he is, he doesn't have a physical body anymore. Just a strand of his divine soul can't do much. If we work together, we have a good chance of winning. Alright then, let's try. The demonic dragon elder didn't waste any more words. He performed another hand seal and the sky changed color again. Demon spirit, let's go. The Silver Dragon Elder urged. No. The demon spirit hesitated. It's not easy for me to see the light of day again. I can't risk being turned into ashes again. I can't. The demon spirit didn't advance. Instead he retreated. Silver Dragon, the grudge between you and the demonic dragon elder has nothing to do with me. I won't get involved, the demon spirit said. But you caused me to lose my physical body 1,000 years ago. You owe me and I'll get it back from you. If you're lucky enough to survive this, wait for me at the Silver Dragon Palace on the extreme Abyss continent. After the demon spirit finished speaking, a sword light appeared under his feet and he quickly flew towards the entrance of the cave. The demon dragon elder was casting and the Silver Dragon Elder couldn't get away, so the two of them could only watch the demon spirit escape alone. Chapter 437. Violent spiritual energy surged from the dragon patriarch's hand seals, and the silver dragon elder held the sky-turning mirror in his hand. He didn't know how he did it, but the sky-turning mirror suddenly enlarged and stood in front of him like a shield. Liemo held Xuanhuan tightly in his arms to prevent her from getting hurt. If not for the two elders blocking the cave entrance, Liemo would have already escaped with Xuanhuan. When the seals were formed, the demonic dragon ancestor pushed his hands towards the silver dragon elder and a terrifying pillar of spiritual energy shot out from the array before him. That pillar of light hit the silver dragon elder's sky-flipping mirror. With a crack, another crack appeared on the surface of the sky-turning mirror. But at the same time the heaven-turning mirror cracked, the mirror also played a reflective role, and a part of the spiritual light beam hit the demon dragon ancestor's body. The demonic dragon patriarch's expression changed, and the formation he was controlling trembled, causing the beam of light to flicker in and out of existence. Patriarch, I'm not going to fight you today. Come find me on the extreme abyss continent if you dare. The silver dragon elder found an opportunity. He suddenly turned into a stream of light and entered the sky-turning mirror. Then the mirror also turned into a stream of light and sped out of the cave. Silver dragon, don't run. The demonic dragon patriarch shouted. He wanted to give chase, but the Phalai blade didn't seem to listen to his commands. Only then did he turn his attention to Xuanhuan and Liemo's voices. The Phalai blade brought the elder to Xuanhuan's side, and Liemo helped her up. Little one, the elder called out. You should call me master. The demonic dragon patriarch wanted to say more, but his words were stuck in his throat when he heard Xuanhuan's chirping. You little brat, you didn't know who I was before and I forgot who I was. That's why you were so rude to me. Now that you know who I am, how dare you treat me so rudely? Be careful or I'll teach you a lesson. The demonic dragon patriarch grumbled. In the past, a strand of his soul had remained in the Phalai blade, becoming its sword spirit. Because of his long slumber, he had forgotten his own identity. Later, Xuanhuan accidentally discovered the Phalai blade in the lake and became its master. As the sword spirit, the demonic dragon ancestor naturally had to address Xuanhuan as his master. Xiaoqiu's words weren't wrong, but how was it possible for the demonic dragon ancestor to call Xuanhuan his master? No matter what your identity is, my master is your master. This is an undeniable fact, Xiaoqiu said, unwilling to give up. Old ancestor Mo Long's expression became even more unsightly. Xuanhuan couldn't eavesdrop on the conversation between Xiaoqiu and the demonic dragon patriarch, so when she saw the demonic dragon patriarch's expression change, she became wary. After all, it wasn't clear whether he was a friend or foe. Liemo, on the other hand, had overheard the conversation between Xiaoqiu and the demonic dragon elder. Xiaoqiu's negotiating with the elder, so let's just wait and see. Mistress, control the Phalai blade's flight, Xiaoqiu said in Xuanhuan's mind. Xuanhuan followed Xiaoqiu's instructions and controlled the Phalai blade's flight in the same manner as before. Xuanhuan had been able to control the Phalai blade very well when she was still a 4th-rank swordsman, and now that she was a 9th-rank swordsman, it was a piece of cake for her. Without any warning, the Phalai blade suddenly flew around the small cave. The demonic dragon ancestor who was on it was caught off guard and was about to be lifted into the air as well. Stop, stop, the demonic dragon ancestor shouted. I told you to stop. Xuanhuan finally commanded the Phalai blade to stop. The demonic dragon ancestor's wisp of soul finally stabilized, and he glared at Xuanhuan angrily. Mistress, you don't have to be afraid of him, Xiaoqiu said. Although the demonic dragon ancestor is powerful, he's only a wisp of his soul. He can't leave the Phalai blade, and the Phalai blade has acknowledged you as its master, so he's your subordinate just like me, ha. Xuanhuan spoke up amidst Xiaoqiu's proud laughter. Xiaoqiu, the way he chased the silver dragon elder away just now wasn't a joke. If he didn't want to acknowledge me as his master, he could have killed me and turned me into an ownerless object. This girl sure knows what's good for her. The demonic dragon ancestor had overheard Xuanhuan and Xiaoqiu's conversation. That little thing must have been sealed away for too long, and his brain isn't working well anymore. What are you talking about? You're the one who's not working well. Xiaoqiu retorted angrily. The two of them had always liked to bicker, and even after all this time they were still the same. Xuanhuan smiled. Senior, please don't lower yourself to Xiaoqiu's level. Not bad. The demonic dragon ancestor stroked his long beard and looked at Xuanhuan with satisfaction. Your demonic dragon bloodline is very pure. I didn't expect that after 4 millennia, I'd still be able to see a descendant of my demonic dragon bloodline. The moment the demonic dragon ancestor regained his memories, he knew who Yunruoyan was. He had been slumbering in the glacial lake for nearly 1,000 years, but this girl with the demonic dragon bloodline had awakened him. Was this a sign from the heavens that the demonic dragon clan could finally see the light of day once more? The demonic dragon ancestor's gaze toward Yunruoyan suddenly turned passionate, causing Liamo to feel a little uneasy. "Senior, what are your plans now?" Liamo asked, shielding Yunruoyan behind him. The demonic dragon ancestor looked at Liamo coldly. "A silver dragon brat? No, a brat with the bloodline of the silver dragons." Yunruoyan could hear the murderous intent in the silver dragon elder's tone. The demonic dragon ancestor and the silver dragon clan were irreconcilable enemies, and the demonic dragon ancestor was filled with hatred for everything and everyone related to the silver dragon clan. "Senior, he's not a silver dragon," Yunruoyan hurriedly explained. "He's just like me, a part of the silver dragon bloodline, and he's my husband." "He's your husband?" The demonic dragon ancestor asked in shock. One with the silver dragon bloodline, and the other with the demonic dragon bloodline, had become husband and wife. The demonic dragon elder seemed to sense a strange aura emanating from Yunruoyan's body. He couldn't help but glance at her abdomen. Not only had they become husband and wife, they'd even shared the same bloodline. "The silver dragons also have a grudge against me for killing my parents, so not only will I not be a threat to the demonic dragons, but I'll even help you deal with them," Zhui Feng explained. Seeing the demonic dragon ancestor's silence, Yunruoyan asked, "Senior, what do you have to say next? I can remove my contract with the Phalai Blade and return you your freedom." Patriarch Demonic Dragon waved a hand. "I'm going back to the Xuanhuan continent with you. The battle 1,000 years ago took place on the Xuanhuan continent. Although the demonic dragons died in body, their souls did not perish. I want to find my kin. Since you have the demonic dragon bloodline, I'm sure you know where they are." Yunruoyan didn't intend to tell the demonic dragon ancestor about the lair, because she was worried that he would try to resurrect his kin. In the past, Yunruoyan had never considered sacrificing herself. Now that she had Liamo, a child, and a home of her own, she was even less willing to sacrifice herself. If the demonic dragon ancestor forced her, she would die with him. In that short period of time, Yunruoyan had already prepared for the worst-case scenario. What Yunruoyan didn't expect was that the demonic dragon ancestor would use a soul-harvesting technique to read her thoughts and learn of the existence of the lair from her mind. This shocked Yunruoyan, but the demonic dragon ancestor continued, "In the past I would have used any means necessary to sacrifice you in exchange for my master's rebirth, but there's no need for that now." "What do you mean?" Yunrongyin and Liamo asked at the same time. "What I mean is that there's no need for a successor of the demonic dragon bloodline, and my kin can be resurrected," the demonic dragon ancestor explained frankly. The demon spirit ancestor didn't hide anything and said, "Our demon dragon clan has an ancient array. After activating the array and combining with the demon dragon bloodline, we can reconstruct the dragon body of our dead clansmen. This process requires extremely pure blood. Now, apart from this girl's bloodline, there's also a substitute. This girl's bloodline is limited, and the number of kin she can resurrect is limited. If we can obtain this substitute, we'll be able to resurrect a large number of kin." The more the demonic dragon ancestor spoke, the more excited he became, as if reviving the demonic dragon clan was just around the corner. Yunruoyan and Liamo could guess what he was referring to from his words. "You're referring to the holy water?" "That's right. As long as we can obtain the holy water, we'll be able to resurrect the demonic dragon clan." The demonic dragon ancestor continued to possess the Phalai blade as a sword spirit. Yunruoyan stored the blade in her bracelet, then she and Liamo went to meet up with Feng Yicheng and the others. When they learned that the Thunderbolt father and son had been killed, everyone was overjoyed, especially Auntie Hong and Hoodlum. Knowing that their vengeance had been avenged, Auntie Hong's guilt toward her sisters lessened somewhat, and she smiled for the first time since her rescue. Without the Thunderbolt father and son, the entire Thunderbolt manor scattered. The families that had allied themselves with the Thunderbolt family were defeated by Feng Yicheng one after another, and the remaining families that had remained neutral also expressed their allegiance. In less than half a year, almost the entire Netherworld continent had submitted to the Feng family, and the Feng family had become the true hegemon of the continent. Feng Yicheng also officially became the head of the Feng family, and on an auspicious day he tied the knot with Auntie Hong. Half a year passed quickly, and it was finally time for the Whirlpool Gate to open. On this day Feng Yiqing, Auntie Hong, Thunderbolt and Lai Yun, who had married Thunderbolt, came to send Yun Ruoyan and the others off. Sister Ruoyan, I don't know when we'll be able to see each other again. Auntie Hong held Yun Ruoyan's hand, tears in her eyes. If not for Yun Ruoyan risking her life to save her so many times, she wouldn't have been able to live a life that she could only dream of. Chapter 438. Sister, don't be too sad. Yun Ruoyan looked at Auntie Hong's slightly protruding belly. Be careful of the young master in there. You have to take care of yourself too. When you give birth you have to bring the child with you. I'll be waiting for you, Auntie Hong said. After half a year Yun Ruoyan's belly was no longer small, and in another 3 or 4 months she would be ready to give birth. Yun Ruoyan hugged Auntie Hong lightly, then turned to Thunderclap. I'm sorry I wasn't able to find your arm, Yun Ruoyan said apologetically. Thunderclap had been incinerated by the demonic dragon patriarch's spiritual fire, and so had Thunderclap's arm. Don't worry, I'm already used to living without an arm, Thunderclap replied. As soon as he finished speaking, Lai Yun's voice rang out. I'll take care of him. I'm his arm. Lai Yun's words were gentle, and Thunderclap's gaze toward Lai Yun was just as gentle. By the side, Feng Yiqing was bidding farewell to Liu Mo. The two of them had become good friends ever since they'd first arrived on the Netherworld continent. Brotherly, if you ever need my help in the future, please let me know, Feng Yiqing said. Yun Ruoyan continued, there's no need for that. Right now, the two of us have a favor to ask of you. What is it? As long as it's within my power, I'll do it. Feng Yiqing was no less grateful to Yun Ruoyan and Liu Mo than to Auntie Hong, and he was naturally more than willing to fulfill their requests. Feng Yiqing and Rong Yueshan came here with us from the Qingyuan continent, and we were supposed to take them with us when we left. However, the two of them are nowhere to be found, Liu Mo continued. Brother Feng, please help us find them. Liu Mo and Yun Ruoyan had already told Feng Yiqing and the others that Zhuo Yifeng had been possessed by a demonic spirit, so they naturally knew what was going on. Of course, Zhuo Yifeng has contributed greatly to the Feng family, and we'll do our best to find him. As for Rong Yueshan, how should we deal with her? Rong Yueshan killed a fellow disciple, and even if she were to be brought back to the Qingyuan continent, she'd still be sentenced to death, Yun Ruoyan replied. However, she's extremely cunning and won't be easy to deal with. In that case, since we've already caught him, we'll execute him on the spot, Feng Yiqing ordered. Yun Ruoyan didn't object. Liu Mo, sister-in-law, it's time to go. Qin Feng looked at the surface of the sea in the distance. The clouds churned, and after a few times a large number of clouds began to gather. Under the guidance of some kind of force, they began to revolve in a certain direction. That was the sign that the vortex door was about to open. Sister Ruoyan, we can finally go home. Lin Qingqian sighed. Beside her, Lin Qingxue couldn't hold back her tears, partly because she was excited, and partly because she was worried about Zhuo Yifeng's whereabouts. Over the past half a year, Lin Qingxue had searched the entire continent with the help of the city guards, but she still hadn't found any trace of Zhuo Yifeng. Yun Ruoyan had told her that Zhuo Yifeng had most likely left the continent, and that his life wasn't in danger. Only then did Lin Qingxue give up the search. Brother Qin, are you really not going back with us? Yun Ruoyan turned to Qin Feng and asked, just as they were about to leave. One of the reasons they'd come here was to bring Qin Feng back to the Qingyuan continent. Now that the day had finally come, Qin Feng had chosen to stay. I don't have too many attachments on the Qingyuan continent anymore, and I've developed a deep bond with the city guards, Qin Feng continued. As for Zhuo Yifeng, I have a feeling that he's still here. I'll stay here and continue searching for him. Since Qin Feng had already made his decision, Yun Ruoyan and the others didn't want to force him. Take care. Yun Ruoyan cupped her fists at the people behind her. Let's go. Li Mo's feet glowed with light as he lifted Yun Ruoyan into the air. Behind them, the Lin sisters and Lin Tianming also took to the skies. After 2 years of training, the two of them were both early-stage 9th-rank blade masters. Lin Qingqian in particular seemed to be on the verge of breaking through. On the other hand, because of her pregnancy, Yun Ruoyan's cultivation had stagnated at the peak of 9th rank, and she was only a paper window away from becoming a sword saint. At the right moment she would be able to break through that barrier. Qingqian, Qingxue, you two go first. Liu Mo slowed down, allowing the Lin sisters to enter the vortex first. He and Yun Ruoyan followed closely behind in case any turbulence occurred. The Lin sisters carried Lin Tianming's wheelchair and flew into the vortex first, with Liu Mo and Yun Ruoyan following closely behind. Together they were swallowed up by the vortex. At the same time, outside the city lord's manor, which had long since been abandoned, a sneaky figure darted into the manor. This woman was none other than Rong Yueshan. She'd been on the run for the past 6 months. After the death of the Li father and son, she had no one to rely on, and she knew that if she were caught by Yun Ruoyan, she would undoubtedly die. Even if she managed to return to the Xuanhuan continent, Kongming Academy wouldn't let her off easily. As such, Rong Yueshan decided to remain here until Yun Ruoyan and the others left. Today was the opening of the vortex, and Rong Yueshan made use of this opportunity to sneak into the city lord's manor. Half a year ago, the Thunderbolt Manor had been occupied by the Feng family, and Rong Yueshan had fled in a hurry. Before she left, she had stashed away quite a few spirit stones in a secluded corner of the manor. As long as she could find these stones, she would be able to continue her cultivation in the future. Rong Yueshan hurried to the back of the manor where she had once lived. The back of the manor was a storeroom, and all of the spirit stones that she had accumulated were stored there. Rong Yueshan entered the storeroom and began her search. Just as she was clearing out a corner of the room, her gaze suddenly landed on a broken mirror. The surface of the mirror was covered in a thick layer of dust, but it looked very familiar. Rong Yueshan's eyes widened, because she suddenly remembered where she had seen this mirror before. Once, she had overheard a conversation between the Li father and son, and they were talking about a mirror that could turn the skies upside down. At the time, she had peeked into the room from outside, and she had seen that mirror in Li Yan's hands. Rong Yueshan held the mirror in her hand and used her hand to brush away the dust on the mirror. Suddenly she felt a sharp pain in her hand. The broken glass on the mirror had pricked her finger, and blood was dripping from the wound onto the mirror. The drop of blood quickly melted into the surface of the mirror, and the dim surface of the shattered mirror suddenly lit up. An old man in silver-white robes appeared within the light. It was the Silver Dragon Elder. Back then, the Silver Dragon Elder was no match for the demonic dragon patriarch, so he had wanted to use the sky-turning mirror to escape. However, the mirror had been destroyed, and the Silver Dragon Elder had been unable to open a passage back to the extreme abyss continent, nor could he leave the mirror. Thus, he had been trapped inside until Rong Yueshan discovered the mirror and repaired it with her blood. Rong Yueshan stared at the Silver Dragon Elder, who had suddenly appeared. Although she had never seen him before, she had heard of him more than once from Thunderbolt Badian, so she quickly recognized him. With a plop, before Silver Dragon Zhonglai could ask anything, she knelt down in front of him. "Senior, please accept me as your disciple and take me away from here," Rong Yueshan said without hesitation. In an extremely secretive cave on the Nether Abyss continent, Zhuai Feng and the demon spirit were engaged in a great battle of possession. Although he had agreed to fuse with the demon spirit's soul, Zhuai Feng clearly wasn't willing to let his body be taken away just like that. Thus, he still retained a trace of his consciousness during the fusion process. Because of this, he now had a chance to contend against the demon spirit. Zhuai Feng's face alternated between red and white. When it was red, it was the demonic dragon's sinister voice, and when it was white, it was Zhuai Feng's voice. "Zhuai Feng, what do you want?" the demon spirit yelled, desperately grabbing his other hand to prevent himself from strangling him to death. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhuai Feng's red face instantly turned snow-white. Zhuai Feng continued, "I said that if there comes a day when I can't control myself, I will kill myself. In short, I will not leave my body for you to do evil with." "Which eye of yours saw me do evil?" the demon spirit anxiously yelled. "I have never used your body to do evil. That's because I still have a sliver of my divine sense that can restrain you. If I wait until I'm suppressed by you, I'm afraid that you'll do all sorts of bad things. If that's the case, I might as well die with you as soon as possible." Zhuai Feng tightened his grip even more. The demon spirit couldn't separate from Zhuai Feng's body. If Zhuai Feng really strangled him to death, the demon spirit would die with him. Of course he couldn't let that happen. "Stop. I promise to return your body to you," the demon spirit cried. Zhuai Feng didn't believe it. Only when the demon spirit told him what he was thinking did Zhuai Feng remove his hand from his neck. "Are you telling the truth?" Zhuai Feng still didn't believe the demon spirit. "Of course. I will go to the extreme abyss continent right now. Once I obtain the holy water and reconstruct my body, do you think I will still care about your body? When that time comes, even if you beg me to stay in your body, I won't be willing." The demon spirit said that his sect had a passage to the extreme abyss continent. The sect was on the Nether Abyss continent, so the two of them set off for the sect. The demon spirit had been harmed by the Silver Dragon Elder. Then the Silver Dragon Elder had sent people to massacre the sect. When the two of them arrived at the sect, they saw nothing but desolation. Silver Dragon, you deceived me, harmed me, and destroyed my sect. I, the demon spirit, swear that I will not forgive you. Looking at the ruins of the sect, the demon spirit pointed to the sky and swore. Chapter 439. Kongming Academy, top floor of the southern tower. A few elders stood in front of the all-seeing mirror, observing the changes occurring on its surface. The sea of clouds began to churn, forming a vortex that grew larger and larger. Clouds began to gush out of the vortex, forming a door. I wonder how many will be able to return this time. No one can say for sure, but with Liemo around, at least one of them should be able to make it back alive. That's right. With him around, each of our courtyards should be able to save at least one. Let's wait and see. We'll know once they're out. The few elders were discussing in low voices, while the great elder and the second elder were staring at the gate formed by the clouds without blinking. They're out. One of the elders shouted. Then, everyone saw that the Lin sisters were the first to walk out of the door formed by the clouds. What puzzled everyone was that the Lin sisters were carrying a wheelchair, and on the wheelchair sat a middle-aged man. Xuanhuan and Liemo walked out from behind the three of them. When the first elder saw the two of them, his expression finally softened a little. Liemo, you're back. It's good that you're back. The first elder took a step forward, his gaze sweeping over them one by one. When his gaze landed on Lin Tianming, he paused. And this is my uncle, Xuanhuan explained. He's a member of the Lin family. Lin Tianming pays his respects to the first elder. Supported by the Lin sisters, Lin Tianming stood up and cupped his fists toward the first elder. Lin Tianming, the eldest son of the Lin family? The first elder would occasionally visit the capital, so he had heard of the Lin family's affairs. Because of Xuanhuan, he had gained a better understanding of the Lin family. Naturally, he knew that the scions of the Yun family had passed away many years ago. When Lin Tianming suddenly returned from an alternate continent, it was only natural that he would be surprised. First elder, I'll tell you about the details later, Liemo replied. You've just returned from an alternate continent, and you must be exhausted. Go and rest. The first elder looked at Xuanhuan benevolently. As soon as Liemo pulled Xuanhuan out of the whirlpool, the first elder saw Xuanhuan's bulging belly. When she and Liemo entered the alternate dimension, they were already married, so it was only natural that she was pregnant. If the Empress knew that Liemo had a descendant, she would surely be delighted, the first elder thought. The door is closed. Is there no one here? The three of them are all from the South Campus. None of us from the other campuses came back? As soon as Xuanhuan and Liemo walked out and the whirlpool behind them disappeared, the elders couldn't help but turn their attention to Liemo. Liemo, only a few of you have returned. Where are the Northern College's students and those from the other colleges? The second elder asked darkly. Yeah, where are our people? What? All of them are from the South Campus. Liemo, where's Zhuifeng? Why hasn't he returned with you? The sixth elder asked. He knew that Zhuifeng had a personal relationship with Liemo and Xuanhuan, so he had high hopes that Zhuifeng would return safely, but he hadn't expected that he wouldn't return either. Elders, I'm sure you all know that the alternate dimension is extremely dangerous, and everyone who enters it has a slim chance of survival. No matter who doesn't return, you should all be mentally prepared, the first elder replied. Of course we know that, the second elder replied coldly. The second elder's voice was cold. But the current situation is that the ones who died were our men, and the blame for their deaths is on the Southern College. Shouldn't Liemo give us an explanation for this? If not a single one of them had returned from the alternate dimension, or if only Liemo and Xuanhuan had returned, the elders wouldn't have objected. But now that all of them were from the Southern College, the elders couldn't help but feel aggrieved. The second elder, in particular, stepped in front of Liemo and Xuanhuan, as though he wouldn't allow them to leave until the matter was resolved. And if I don't? Liemo was about to lose his patience with the second elder's relentlessness. He pulled Xuanhuan aside and continued on his way. Humph, have you forgotten to respect your elders after a single trip to the alternate dimension? In that case, I'll teach you a lesson. As the second elder spoke, he reached out to grab Liemo. Liemo let go of Xuanhuan's hand and struck out with his own palm, a violent burst of spiritual energy emanating from their palms and bodies. In the past, Liemo naturally wouldn't have dared to engage in a direct confrontation with the first elder. But now, his cultivation was on par with the second elder's, and he seemed to be on the verge of surpassing him. Just then, the demonic dragon patriarch's voice rang out in Xuanhuan's mind. Child, I can feel the all-seeing mirror's aura. Ever since the demonic dragon patriarch had regained his memories and fought with the silver dragon, he had once again remained in Yun Ruoyan's body as a sword spirit. Over the past 6 months he had been in a deep slumber. Just then he had suddenly sensed a familiar aura, and he had woken up from his slumber. "We came out of the all-seeing mirror," Xiao answered on Yun Ruoyan's behalf. "What?" the demon dragon ancestor shouted. "We actually came back through the all-seeing mirror. It's really a case of wearing out iron shoes and fruitless searching, only to find it by chance." As soon as he finished speaking, he and the Phalai blade transformed into a streak of light and flew out of the pocket dimension, stopping in front of the all-seeing mirror. Everyone's attention was focused on Li Mo and the second elder. Apart from Yun Ruoyan, no one noticed the demonic dragon patriarch's presence. When Yun Ruoyan saw the demonic dragon patriarch emerge from the Phalai blade and stride toward the all-seeing mirror, she couldn't help but yelp. "You can't take it." But it was too late. The demonic dragon patriarch had already grabbed the all-seeing mirror in his hand. There was a cracking sound and a thunderous explosion. Only then did everyone notice that the old sword spirit had appeared out of nowhere. This old man was not afraid of death as he held the all-seeing mirror in his hand. "Put it down." Yun Ruoyan rushed toward the sword spirit. But Li Mo grabbed Yun Ruoyan's hand. Both he and the second elder had withdrawn their hands when the lightning had struck. The all-seeing mirror has a restriction on it. If you touch it recklessly, it'll activate the heaven and earth formation, and its power will be unimaginable. Put it down. Where did this sword spirit come from? How dare he? The elders all looked shocked and angry, but not a single one of them made a move. They were all waiting for the heaven and earth formation to activate. Elder Mo Long turned a deaf ear to everything that was happening around him. He held the God's Eye mirror in his hand and calmly moved through the thunder and lightning. His hand formed a mysterious seal and a dazzling starlight appeared on his fingertip. Then he gently touched the God's Eye mirror with the starlight. The blinding surface of the mirror dimmed, and the lightning and thunder gradually disappeared. Finally there was no sound at all. The heaven and earth formation, which had caused everyone's expressions to change, had been easily dispelled by the demonic dragon patriarch. Everyone, including Yun Ruoyan, Li Mo, and the second elder, were dumbfounded. "All-seeing mirror, long time no see." The demonic dragon patriarch stroked the surface of the mirror as if it were an old friend. "May I know who you are, senior? Please put down the all-seeing mirror. This is the treasure of our Kongming Academy." The first elder bowed deeply toward the demonic dragon patriarch, then turned toward Yun Ruoyan. The first elder clearly remembered that the Phalai blade belonged to Yun Ruoyan. Back when Yun Ruoyan had first entered the academy, the first elder had sealed it, and the demonic dragon patriarch had fought with the first elder. At the time, however, the demonic dragon patriarch had no memories, and his cultivation was only for show, so the first elder hadn't taken him seriously. Now, however, the might that the demonic dragon patriarch was displaying caused the first elder and everyone present to stare in shock. "Since when did the all-seeing mirror belong to you?" The demonic dragon patriarch glanced at the first elder. The demonic dragon patriarch's gaze alone was enough to make the elders' hearts tremble. "Ruoyan," the first elder called out to Yun Ruoyan. "Speak to him." Yun Ruoyan turned back to Li Mo, then walked up to the first elder's side and whispered to him. From the first elder's words, Yun Ruoyan learned about the former owner of the all-seeing mirror. As it turned out, the all-seeing mirror had once been the demonic dragon patriarch's keepsake. It had suddenly disappeared 1,000 years ago, and the demonic spirit had helped the demonic dragon patriarch track it down. Later on, he had fallen for the demonic spirit and the silver dragon elder's trap while searching for the all-seeing mirror. At the time, the all-seeing mirror had been in the silver dragon elder's possession. The silver dragon elder had used the sky-turning mirror, the Skyfall Avenue, and the all-seeing mirror to destroy the demonic dragon patriarch's body. In the process of my resistance, all 3 of the mirrors were heavily damaged. The sky-turning mirror was destroyed, and the all-seeing mirror were sent flying. I didn't expect to see it again today, the demonic dragon elder began. This formation is the mirror's own defensive mechanism. Those who don't know how to control it won't be able to control it, and it's been waiting for its master to arrive. The demonic dragon elder's last sentence was so loud that all of the other elders heard it. Although the all-seeing mirror had always belonged to Kongming Academy, the elder's display of power left no room for doubt. "Little girl, I was thinking of creating a teleportation array to get to the extreme abyss continent, but there's no need for that now. We can use the all-seeing mirror to enter whenever we want." Without giving Yun Ruoyan a chance to speak, the demonic dragon patriarch stuffed the mirror into his robes. Chapter 440. The elders watched helplessly as demon dragon ancestor kept the god's eye mirror in his arms. How could they not do something? But just as they were about to make a move, demon dragon ancestor took out the god's eye mirror and shone it at them. A beam of light shot out from the mirror and shone on the elders. It was as if a talisman was stuck on their bodies, causing them to be unable to move. The elders were shocked, and they immediately realized that this seemingly ordinary sword spirit was actually an expert that they couldn't hope to match. In the face of absolute power, the elders had no choice but to compromise, even if they didn't want to part with the all-seeing mirror. Even if the mirror didn't belong to me in the first place, would you be able to stop me if I wanted it back? The elder replied coolly. Senior, please forgive our rudeness. Since the all-seeing mirror belongs to you, it's only right that it be returned to its rightful owner, the first elder replied. Senior, you're truly an expert. The all-seeing mirror has been in Kongming Academy for nearly 1,000 years, and no one has ever been able to touch it. Since you're able to use it, then it must belong to you and we're willing to return it to its rightful owner, the second elder added. When the other three elders saw the great elder and the second elder say so, they also echoed in succession. Humph, at least you're sensible. The patriarch stowed away the all-seeing mirror, and the elders regained their freedom. Because the demonic dragon clan's reputation wasn't particularly good on the Xuanhuan continent, Xuanhuan had only told the first elder about the patriarch's identity. That senior is the patriarch? The first elder clearly knew of the patriarch. Legend has it that he perished in a great battle 1,000 years ago. I didn't expect him to leave behind a fragment of his soul. The first elder sighed at Xuanhuan's explanation. The demonic dragon clan and the silver dragon clan will have a great battle in the near future, Liamo replied. I thought that I'd have to wait a long time before I could seek revenge against the first elder of the Silver Dragon clan. I didn't expect that I'd have a chance so soon. The first elder's eyes lit up. Liamo Royan, the Empress knows that you're returning today, and she specifically instructed that you go to the Beast King's castle. Before we go see Mother, there's a place we have to go first. That night, Xuanhuan, Liamo, and the first elder entered the trial through the all-seeing mirror. The three of them dove into the icy lake and swam toward the demonic dragon grotto. I can feel my people. It's been 1,000 years. I'm finally back. The elder's excited voice rang out in Xuanhuan's mind, and the phalai blade flew out of the bracelet's pocket dimension. The elder steered it toward the source of the aura. Xuanhuan, Liamo, and the first elder followed closely behind him. My people, I'm back. Demon dragon ancestor's voice echoed throughout the entire cold pond. Then, the roars of dragons rose and fell from the bottom of the lake. When the three of them reached the bottom of the lake, they saw the demonic dragon's soul prostrating in front of the demonic dragon's ancestor. Patriarch, you actually didn't die. Our patriarch didn't die. Our demon dragon clan finally has hope. Great, we have hope. Dragon roars rang out from behind the demonic dragon's soul. 1,000 years ago, I was harmed by a scoundrel and I implicated everyone. The demon dragon elder's eyes were brimming with tears, and the demon dragon soul's two bell-like eyes were also dripping with large drops of crystal tears. Now that I'm back, I'll do everything in my power to revive all of you and revive the demonic dragon clan, the elder promised to all the dragon souls in the grotto. After nearly 1,000 years of silence, the grotto suddenly erupted with an earth-shattering dragon roar. This is Xuanhuan. Once the grotto quieted down, the demonic dragon patriarch pointed at Xuanhuan. Everyone should know her. She's the inheritor of the demonic dragon bloodline, and I hereby announce that she'll be the temporary elder of the demonic dragon clan. Elder Mo Long's words caused an uproar among the crowd. Xuanhuan was even more dumbfounded. Patriarch, what do you mean by this? Liamo asked before Xuanhuan could. The patriarch's decision was very sudden. Not only had he not discussed it with the two of them beforehand, he hadn't even revealed a hint of it. What I mean is that I'll hand over my position of elder to that little girl, Xuanhuan. Haven't I made myself clear enough? The elder said matter-of-factly, ignoring the shocked expressions on Xuanhuan's and Limo's faces. Patriarch, this is just your wishful thinking. You didn't ask for our opinion, Liamo replied coldly. Do you even need to ask? The elder raised an eyebrow. Xuanhuan is the only one in the entire demonic dragon clan with a physical body, so of course she'll be the next head of the clan. The elder tried to use logic as an excuse, but Liamo couldn't get through to him at all. I don't want to, Xuanhuan finally said. Finally Xuanhuan spoke up. Senior, what are you trying to do? The position of head of the demonic dragon clan isn't something that can be easily assumed by the village head, and I'm not a member of the demonic dragon clan. Can you stop joking around? Xuanhuan didn't take the patriarch's words seriously. In her eyes, the elder was just like an old urchin, and when he said that she would be the next head of the demonic dragon clan, she treated it as a joke. Little girl, do you think I'm joking with you? The elder looked at Xuanhuan, his expression suddenly turning serious. You're not joking? Xuanhuan smiled. Look at me now. I'm pregnant, so how could I possibly take on such an important position as head of the clan? Don't tease me. The demonic dragon patriarch didn't respond. Instead, he flashed the all-seeing mirror at the cavern behind him. The all-seeing mirror is the patriarch's token, and I swear on it that I will pass on my position to Xuanhuan today without any hesitation. Xuanhuan began to panic. Senior, are you serious? You're really not joking. Do I look like I'm joking? The patriarch's expression was serious, and he didn't look like he was joking at all. I don't agree. Xuanhuan immediately rejected the elder's proposal, realizing the gravity of the situation. But it was too late. Greetings, clan head. The silver dragon elder actually bowed to Xuanhuan from atop the Phalai blade. Behind him, the demonic dragon's soul froze, as if it hadn't realized what was going on. Elder, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and greet the new clan head. The patriarch shouted at the demonic dragon's soul. The demonic dragon's soul was clearly in awe of the patriarch, and it subconsciously prostrated itself in front of Xuanhuan. Greetings, new clan head. The demonic dragon's soul's voice reverberated throughout the entire lake. Greetings, new clan head. All the dragon souls in the cave called out in unison, their voices shaking the heavens once more. I'm not your clan head, so don't greet me as you wish. Even if you do, it won't count. Xuanhuan hurriedly protested, but the dragon souls didn't listen to her. They continued to greet the new clan head, as if they would continue to do so until the end of time if Xuanhuan didn't agree. Liamo, quick, take me away from here. We can't afford to offend them, but we can't hide from them. Xuanhuan tugged on Liamo's arm, and the two of them swam up to the surface of the lake amidst the dragon's roars. Hey kid, don't run. Wait for me. The demonic dragon ancestor called out anxiously. Clan head, are you really going to pass the position of clan head to Xuanhuan? That girl has the demonic dragon bloodline, and she's destined to be sacrificed in order to revive us. She's not suitable to be our clan head. I'm serious about every word I've said today. From now on, Xuanhuan will be your clan head. The first elder looked at Xuanhuan's fleeing figure with a faint smile on his face, but he quickly retracted his smile and put on a solemn expression. Don't overthink it. I have my reasons for doing so. Whether or not the demonic dragon clan can possess me doesn't depend on me but on that girl. But she doesn't seem to want to be our clan head. I have my ways of making her accept it. The demonic dragon ancestor smiled once more. Xuanhuan, Liamo, and the first elder hurriedly emerged from the lake, followed by the demonic dragon ancestor. Although the demonic dragon ancestor didn't try to force Liamo to take up the position of clan head again, Xuanhuan didn't dare to argue with him. However, he was an elder and Xuanhuan didn't want to bicker with him. She simply let him do whatever he wanted. After 2 days of torment, the demonic dragon ancestor seemed to grow tired and once again entered a deep slumber on the Phalai blade. After a few days of rest, the Lin sisters brought Lin Tianming back to the capital, while Liamo brought Xuanhuan to the Beast Emperor's castle. Greetings, mother. Xuanhuan and Liamo bowed to Empress Xuetong's sculpture. Get up, get up. Empress Xuetong's usually cold voice finally softened when she saw Xuanhuan's bulging belly. She hadn't expected that the two of them would have a bloodline as soon as they'd returned. Of Xuanhuan and Liamo, one had the demonic dragon bloodline, while the other had the silver dragon bloodline. As far as Empress Xuetong knew, these two bloodlines were incompatible. As a result, Empress Xuetong had never truly seen Xuanhuan as her daughter-in-law. In her heart, Xuanhuan was nothing more than a link to the demonic dragon clan. Empress Xuetong was even prepared to dispose of Xuanhuan once she'd outlived her usefulness, so that Liamo could find a new wife among the silver dragons to reproduce. However, when she saw Xuanhuan's bulging belly, her plans took a 180-degree turn. No matter what, she had to protect the child in Xuanhuan's belly. This was the bloodline of her and the Beast Emperor, and if the child could be born successfully, it would surely be a powerful offspring of the demonic dragon and silver dragon bloodline. Yes, mother. Xuanhuan stood up with Liamo's help. Because of her new motherhood, Xuanhuan had grown much more plump, and her entire body seemed to radiate vitality. Ruoyan, you must take good care of yourself. Nothing is more important than your child right now, understand? Empress Xuetong's tone was filled with concern. Xuanhuan's heart was moved. From the first time she'd met Empress Xuetong, she'd felt her cold demeanor. Although the Empress had tried her best to appear gentle, Xuanhuan had still sensed it. Although she wasn't disappointed, she still felt a little uncomfortable. But now Xuanhuan could clearly feel Empress Xuetong's concern. Mother, don't worry. I'll take good care of myself. After some small talk, the three of them got down to business. I've received word from the first elder that the demonic dragon patriarch is with you, Empress Xuetong said. That's right. He'd like to meet you, Mother, Xuanhuan replied, and a black light flew out of her pocket dimension. The Phalai blade stopped in front of Empress Xuetong, and the demonic dragon patriarch sat on it. The holy maiden of the Silver Dragon clan, the elder announced, looking at Empress Xuetong's sculpture. Greetings, patriarch, Empress Xuetong replied. Chapter 441. Empress Xuetong and the demonic dragon ancestor stared at each other silently, as if they were communicating in a way that no one else could hear or participate in. After a long while, Empress Xuetong asked Xuanhuan and Liemo to leave. She wanted to speak to the demonic dragon ancestor alone. Xuanhuan and Liemo followed Su Bei out of the underground palace. Your Highness, why didn't Feng return with you? Did something happen to him? Su Bei couldn't help but ask. Ever since he'd learned that Liemo and the others had returned safely, he'd been hoping to see Xuefeng. A few days ago he'd gone to the cliffside of Kongming Academy by himself, but he hadn't seen Xuefeng for 2 days straight. Then he'd snuck into the Central College and found out that Xuefeng hadn't returned. He'd wanted to ask Liemo about it, but the demonic dragon ancestor's appearance had made the first elder extremely nervous, and the Southern College and the Southern Tower, which had never had so many guards, suddenly had quite a few experts guarding it. As a result, Su Bei had waited until now to see Liemo. He did indeed meet with an accident, Liemo added. Su Bei's usually resolute face suddenly paled. Although they'd never acknowledged each other, Xuefeng was his only descendant. In his heart, Xuefeng was more important than his own life. Xuefeng did meet with an accident, but we can assure you that his life is not in danger, Xuanhuan added immediately. She glanced at Liemo disapprovingly, as if blaming him for not being clear with his words. Your Highness, what do you mean? Hearing Xuanhuan's words, Su Bei calmed down and his complexion improved. Xuanhuan told Su Bei about how Xuefeng had been possessed by a demonic spirit. Although Fenger's life isn't in danger, this matter is still a close shave, Su Bei sighed. He remembered that he'd promised Xuefeng before he'd left that he'd reveal his identity to him if he returned safely, but it seemed likely that he wouldn't have the chance to do so now. The demonic spirit will definitely head to the extreme abyss continent in search of holy water to reconstruct its body. Once Yener gives birth, we'll head there as well and we'll definitely bring Xuefeng back. Liemo had lost his father at a very young age, so he could empathize with Su Bei and Xuefeng's father-son relationship. Now that he was about to become a father, his feelings for this father-son relationship were even more profound. Thank you, Prince. My son's life is in your hands, Su Bei said. In the underground palace, Empress Xuetong and the demon dragon ancestor were negotiating. Senior demon dragon, my son and daughter-in-law will do their best to help the rebirth and revival of the demon dragon race, so it shouldn't be too much for me to propose a few conditions to you, right? That depends on what conditions you propose. The silver dragons and the demon dragons are like fire and water. Even though you have separated from the silver dragon clan, those who are not of the same clan must have different intentions. You should understand that, the demon dragon elder said. Of course I understand that. That's why we need to discuss our respective requirements and conditions before we cooperate. Alright, then I'll listen to your conditions. Elder demon dragon interrupted Empress Xuetong. My conditions are simple. Empress Xuetong said, after the defeat of the Silver Dragon clan, you can only seek revenge on those in power. You cannot kill or exterminate my entire clan. The demon dragon elder thought for a moment. Naturally, I won't spare a single person in power, and I can't be bothered to pursue the rest. Not only will the demon dragon clan help me find my body, but they will also support my son as the next head of the Silver Dragon clan. The demon dragon clan and the Silver Dragon clan must coexist peacefully. If the two clans were to engage in a war, both would suffer heavy losses. It would be best for the two clans to coexist peacefully, so the demon dragon ancestor naturally had no objections to this. Empress Shuetong, you may not know this, but Yun Ruoyan is already the head of the demon dragon clan. As such, she's here to help revive her clan, not as your daughter-in-law. Ruoyan has become the head of the demon dragon clan? Empress Shuetong was shocked. Because of Yun Ruoyan's refusal, the first elder hadn't informed her of this news. Absolutely, the demon dragon ancestor replied. If your son becomes the head of the silver dragon clan, the two of you will truly be able to coexist peacefully. After a brief moment of shock, Empress Shuetong couldn't help but rejoice. She had originally intended for the demon dragon clan to submit to the silver dragon clan and then submit to Li Mo's rule. However, she knew that the demon dragon ancestor wouldn't agree, so she didn't say it aloud. But now that Yun Ruoyan had become the head of the demon dragon clan, the demon dragon clan would naturally be under Li Mo's rule. If Empress Shuetong hadn't been a statue, she would have been grinning from ear to ear. However, the cold statue completely concealed her expression. She controlled her voice to make it sound even colder. Alright, since we've come to an agreement, let's discuss this matter with the two children, Empress Shuetong said. Because the Feilai blade couldn't be too far away from Yun Ruoyan, she and Li Mo had been standing by the entrance of the underground palace the entire time. When they heard Empress Shuetong's summons, they immediately walked in. Empress Shuetong informed the two of the results of her negotiations with the demon dragon ancestor. Ruoyan, why didn't you tell me that you've become the head of the demon dragon clan? Empress Shuetong asked, not at all blaming Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan glanced at the demonic dragon patriarch, who was stroking his beard, and said helplessly, Mother, I didn't agree to be the head of the demonic dragon clan. This is merely the patriarch's one-sided decision. Ruoyan, why didn't you agree? This is a good thing, Empress Shuetong replied helplessly. Only if you become the head of the demon dragon clan will you be able to help Li Mo deal with the silver dragon elders and further control the clan. Yun Ruoyan had never wanted to control anyone. She had always wanted to control her own fate, and she had never heard Li Mo mention anything about becoming the silver dragon elder. As a result, she wasn't very interested in the decision that Empress Shuetong and the demon dragon ancestor had made. Empress Shuetong was very dissatisfied with Yun Ruoyan's attitude. She was about to scold her when Li Mo spoke up. Mother, can we talk about this later? I'm pregnant right now and everything can wait until I give birth to the child. At the mention of the child, everyone's expressions softened. This child, who possessed both the bloodlines of a demonic dragon and a silver dragon, was everyone's precious treasure. Yun Ruoyan finally agreed to go back and consider the demon dragon ancestor's proposal. The group bade farewell to Empress Shuetong and left the castle. The two of them left the castle and headed towards the imperial city. When the sky was about to turn dark, the two of them arrived at the imperial city. After 2 days of traveling, Yun Ruoyan was exhausted, and Li Mo brought her directly to the slaughtering king's manor. Li Luo had long since received news of their arrival, and she had prepared everything for their arrival. Yun Ruoyan dismounted with Li Mo's help and smiled at the servants who were waiting for her. Your Highness consort, you're finally back. Li Luo walked up to Yun Ruoyan, her eyes slightly red. Yun Ruoyan held Li Luo's hand. Sister Li Luo, you should be happy that we've returned safely. Don't cry. Yes. Li Luo's gaze landed on Yun Ruoyan's abdomen. Not only are you back, Your Highness, but you've also brought back the young master. Sister Li Luo, I'm so tired and hungry. Did you prepare anything delicious for me? Yun Ruoyan tugged on Li Luo's hand. Yes, but we can't have anything too greasy at night. I've prepared your favorite soup as well as some snacks for you. I've also prepared hot water for your bath. Li Luo smiled. Thank you, Sister Li Luo. Yun Ruoyan exclaimed happily. Sister Li Luo, can you not call me consort? It sounds so awkward to me, so just call me by my name. Although they hadn't seen each other for 3 years, Yun Ruoyan and Li Luo were still as familiar as ever. The two of them walked hand in hand as if they were sisters, leaving Li Mo behind. Li Mo smiled as he followed behind the two of them, all the way to the small courtyard they were staying in. Although Yun Ruoyan could now abstain from eating, ever since she had become pregnant, she still had to eat a certain amount of food every day to replenish her nutrients. Because she no longer had the appetite she once had, her food requirements had greatly increased. Fortunately, Li Luo was used to serving Li Mo, and she had a good grasp of Yun Ruoyan's appetite. Yun Ruoyan had the most delicious meal she had ever had after abstaining from eating. After dinner, she was so tired that she didn't want to move at all. She lay down on the soft mattress, her eyes closed as if she would fall asleep at any moment. The hot water for your bath is ready. Didn't you want to bathe early in the morning? Liemo whispered into her ear, his warm breath tickling her ear. Ruoyan scratched her ear. I'm sleepy. Then don't bathe. Let's just sleep, alright? Liemo doted on Ruoyan's messy fringe. The pregnant Ruoyan was simply too beautiful, and Liemo couldn't bear to take his hands off her face. No, it's uncomfortable, Ruoyan muttered. Then do you want me to help? Liemo probed. Ever since Ruoyan had become pregnant, she had refused to let him touch her, fearing that the child would be harmed. Liemo naturally understood this logic, but looking at his beloved wife, he couldn't touch her. Even touching her would cause her to protest, and Liemo had a hard time tolerating it. Ruoyan, on the other hand, had already fallen asleep. Then I'll do it for you. Liemo asked again, but this time Ruoyan didn't respond at all. Liemo stood up, carried Ruoyan in his arms and strode toward the bathroom. Ruoyan woke up in Liemo's embrace. The familiar scent, the familiar bed, and the familiar embrace all made her feel incomparably warm and secure. It's still early. Sleep a little longer, and I'll accompany you to the Lin Manor in the morning. Liemo's low, gentle voice rang out from above Ruoyan's head. Ruoyan murmured softly before closing her eyes once more. Chapter 442. By the time Ruoyan opened her eyes again, the sky was already bright. Liemo wasn't by her side. She stretched lazily, lifted her blanket and got up. She was wearing a new set of pajamas that smelled faintly of flowers. Ruoyan, you're awake. Liluo pushed open the door, holding a stack of clothes in her hands. Behind her was a maidservant carrying a pot of hot water. Where's Liemo? Ruoyan asked. Su Bei came early in the morning. Something must have happened. The two of them are in the study now. Liluo helped Ruoyan wash up and change her clothes, then she went to the study. Su Bei had already left, and Liemo was the only one in the study writing something. Hearing footsteps, Liemo looked up to see Ruoyan dressed in a light red dress, as beautiful as if she had walked out of a painting. She'd once worn a veil because she was weak, but now not only did she have Liemo's protection, but she was also a powerful cultivator. At the very least, she wouldn't be able to find a worthy opponent on the Xuanhuan continent, so there was no need for her to hide. Thus, even though she was pregnant, it did not affect her peerless beauty. Yener. Liemo stretched out his hand, and Ruoyan walked over and placed it in his large palm. What are you writing? Ruoyan smiled. Liemo pulled Ruoyan into his embrace. You might not know this, but in the 3 years that we were away, the Li Kingdom has undergone some changes. What changes? The emperor has passed away, the crown prince has been silenced, the empress has been banished, and the second prince, Xuanhuan, is in charge. Liemo's tone was as calm as ever. Although he was the slaughtering king of the Li Kingdom, he had no connection to the imperial family, and he had no interest in the struggle for power. Ruoyan, on the other hand, was shocked beyond belief. Xuanhuan's in such a state now. Won't this change affect him? The only person in the imperial family who Ruoyan had any sort of relationship with was the third prince, Xuanhuan. Liemo frowned. You're more concerned about my nephew than the Yun family. It's not that Liemo is jealous, but it's uncomfortable for his wife to be concerned about another man. You already said that he is your nephew, so he should also be my nephew. He should call me auntie, so I naturally have to care about him. Ruoyan smiled. As for the Yun family, I don't have to worry at all. My brother and father are here, and Xuanhuan has some connection to the rate of fortune. Even if he doesn't benefit from it, the Yun family won't be any worse off. Ruoyan still remembered that on her grandmother's birthday, Xuanhuan had given her a pearl scepter. Xuanhuan's mother and Ruoyan's grandmother were familiar with each other, and Xuanhuan had even visited the Yun manor with his mother when he was young. However, he didn't have much interaction with Ruoyan, and that was all she knew. Yener is smart. You are right. According to our intelligence reports, Yunlan has long since pledged his allegiance to Xuanhuan, and the Yun family has contributed significantly to his ascension to the throne. As for Xianhuan, he's one of my men and no one would dare touch him. It was common knowledge that Xianhuan had always been close to Liemo. Moreover, he had no interest in power, so he wouldn't become a target for those vying for power. A year ago, the far-sighted king rebelled, and your brother Yun Maxiao was appointed the commander-in-chief of the rebellion. He's still on the battlefield, but he's won many battles in a row. If nothing unexpected happens, he'll be back by the time our child is born. I know a little about my brother's abilities, Ruoyan replied. But why would the far-sighted king rebel all of a sudden? The previous far-sighted king was a demon in disguise, which was why he caused so much trouble. But isn't the current far-sighted king supposed to be real? Why would the real far-sighted king suddenly rebel? Xuanhuan didn't understand. Could it be that the fake far-sighted king is causing trouble again? No, that fake far-sighted king has already been destroyed by your brother, Liemo replied. This time the real far-sighted king is rebelling. As for the reason, we'll know when Li Qianxiao brings him back for trial. Xuanhuan nodded. Liemo grabbed her hand with one hand and placed the other on her abdomen. There's one more thing. Su Bei came this morning and he said that beastmen have been disappearing for no apparent reason, but he hasn't been able to find the cause. I sent Su Bei over first, but he's not sure what's going on. I sent Su Bei over first, and I'll accompany you to see grandfather in the morning. Is the matter very serious? How many people have gone missing? Xuanhuan asked. If it weren't, Su Bei wouldn't have bothered Liemo at such a time. More than 20 people have gone missing. Liemo's expression was grave. In that case, go take a look. I'll go to grandfather's manor on my own. Xuanhuan stood up from Liemo's lap. If not for the fact that she was pregnant, she would have dragged Liemo along with her. At Xuanhuan's urging, Liemo set off for the Beastmen Valley. Before he left, he instructed Li Luo to stay by Xuanhuan's side and protect her. Xuanhuan didn't return to the Yun Manor first. Instead, she went straight to the Lin Manor. Lin Zainan was naturally overjoyed to see her, and Xuanhuan couldn't help feeling a little sour when she saw how much he had aged in just 3 short years. It's good that you're back. Lin Zainan caressed Xuanhuan's head. Not only did Sister Ruoyan return on her own, she even brought one back for grandfather. Lin Qingxua smiled. Lin Qingxua smiled. In the half a year after Zhuo Yifeng's disappearance, Lin Qingxua had always been depressed. Only when she returned to her familiar home did she start to smile again. That's right, our Lin family is blessed with double happiness. Lin Tianming exclaimed as he leaned on his cane. After nearly 2 years of recuperation, Lin Tianming could finally get rid of his wheelchair, but he still had to rely on a cane to walk. However, for someone who had been battling death for more than a decade, preserving his life was the greatest gift from the heavens. No, it's more like triple happiness, father, Lin Qingchen replied. Father, you've returned safely, Sister Ruoyan is about to give birth, and next month will be grandfather's 80th birthday. Next month is grandfather's 80th birthday? Xuanhuan sweated. How could she have forgotten such an important day? In that case, we have to do it properly and make it grand. We can also spread the news of uncle's return to the Lin family. We wanted to make it grand, but I'm afraid that won't be possible under the current circumstances, Lin Tianming replied. What's the matter? Xuanhuan asked. Ruoyan, you should be aware of the current situation in the Li kingdom. The new emperor has just passed away, and the current emperor Li isn't the legitimate heir. The far-sighted king is still plotting a rebellion, so it's best that we keep a low profile. In fact, it'd be better for us to have a proper gathering. If the slaughtering king is free, tell him to come as well, ha. Alright, I'll do as you say, grandfather. Xuanhuan didn't insist on her father's decision. After having lunch at the Lin Manor, Xuanhuan prepared to head to the Yun Manor. Ever since Xuanhuan had found out that she wasn't Yun Lan's daughter, her feelings for the Yun family had grown even more distant. Moreover, with Yun Maxiao's absence, she didn't think much of the Yun family. Ruoyan, you don't seem to want to return to the Yun Manor, Li Luo asked when she saw Xuanhuan's indifferent expression. Li Luo didn't know of Xuanhuan's parentage, which was why she had asked this question. Xuanhuan smiled and changed the topic to Li Luo. Sister Li Luo, I haven't had a chance to ask you about your relationship with my brother ever since I returned. Li Luo paused, clearly not expecting Xuanhuan to suddenly ask such a question. Li Luo had actually been waiting for Xuanhuan to ask about it, but she hadn't. Li Luo had assumed that Xuanhuan had long since forgotten about it. After all, it wasn't a big deal. She hadn't expected Xuanhuan to suddenly ask about it. Still the same. Liemo lowered her head, blushing. Seeing that there was hope, Xuanhuan hurriedly asked, "What do you mean by that?" "That I promise your brother that if he returns safely, I'll agree to his request." "What request?" Xuanhuan moved closer and closer to Li Luo, but Li Luo was afraid that she'd squeeze her belly. "Agree to marry him," Li Luo murmured. "Haha, that's wonderful, haha." Xuanhuan laughed heartily, dispelling her gloomy mood from the impending visit to the Yun family. "My brother really has it hard. If it were anyone else, he'd probably have a few children by now, and he's only just gotten you to agree to marry him. Sister Li Luo, you've been hanging on to my brother for so long, so you have to take responsibility for him. I'm also grateful that he hasn't given up on me. When he returns, I'll definitely marry him. I'm afraid that there's no better place for me in this world than him, Li Luo replied sincerely. I'm just worried that the elders of the Yun family won't agree to it. That's not something you need to worry about, Yun Ruoyan replied. Yun Ruoyan continued, Sister Li Luo, you have to believe in my brother. Since he dared to propose to you, he must have a plan. If he can return safely, his status in the imperial court will surely rise, and he'll have a bargaining chip to use against my father. Moreover, you're a member of the Slaughtering King's Manor, so Li Mo can personally make a move. My father still cares a lot about Li Mo's reputation. Yun Ruoyan couldn't forget how, when Li Mo had first proposed marriage, Yun Lan had looked as though he couldn't wait to shove her into his arms. In any case, you don't have to worry. All you have to do is wait for my brother's triumphant return. The carriage quickly stopped in front of the Yun Manor's gates. Li Luo helped Yun Ruoyan out of the carriage and toward the gates, but unexpectedly they were stopped by the guards. Who are you? Don't you know what kind of place the Yun Manor is? Do you think it's a place you can enter as you please? Hurry up and leave. One of the guards blocked the entrance. Are you new here? You don't recognize me? Yun Ruoyan asked, noticing that the face of the disciple wasn't the same as before. Aren't you the new one? The disciple was unwilling, however. He raised his voice and said, I've been working in the residence of Yun for 2 years. I can even recognize a mouse in the residence of Yun. There's no one like you in or out of the residence of Yun, let alone a person. Leave now. Chapter 443. Li Luo raised her hand and gave the disciple a slap. The disciple didn't have much cultivation, so he was slapped to the ground by Li Luo. Blood flowed from his nose and mouth. You're blind, you dog. Li Luo cursed. This is the consort of the Slaughtering King's Manor, the eldest daughter of the Yun Manor. How dare you point fingers at her? Are you tired of living? What, madam? Monsieur? I'll go report this. The guard finally reacted and scrambled back into the manor. When did the Yun Manor hire such a blind guard? Li Luo stared at the guards back in disgust. Li Luo had visited the manor with Yun Maxiao in private, and she didn't recall this blind guard. Let's go in. Yun Ruoyan frowned. The two of them entered the manor. Along the way, Yun Ruoyan didn't see a single familiar servant. Just as she was wondering what was going on, a familiar voice called out to her. Sister Ruoyan, you're back. Yun Ruoyan looked in the direction of the voice and saw Yun Ruoyu walking toward her. Yun Ruoyan looked at the maids behind her, all of whom were elderly. Even the servant who had been following behind Yun Ruoyu was pale as a sheet. When did you get here, sister? Why haven't I heard anything from sister? Yun Ruoyu smiled warmly. In Yun Ruoyan's eyes, this Yun Ruoyu was both familiar and unfamiliar. In her memory, Yun Ruoyu had been arrogant and unsophisticated, and she had always been the target of Madame and Yun Ruoyao's attacks. Later, because she had married Qin Jianmei, her temper began to subside. After Qin Jianmei's death, she had shut herself off from the world, and Yun Ruoyan hadn't paid much attention to her. However, the Yun Ruoyu in front of her was dressed in bright, beautiful clothes, and her smile was as warm as a spring breeze. If not for the fact that her appearance hadn't changed, Yun Ruoyan might not have recognized her at all. I just got back not long ago and I almost couldn't get through the gates. I haven't been back for 3 years. Did something happen in the manor? Why can't I see a single elder? Sister, 3 years is not a long time, but it's not a short time either. The old people from before have all left the mansion. Yun Ruoyu replied, most of the servants have already worked in the manor for more than 2 years, and they're no longer considered newcomers. If you don't even recognize the young lady of the Fu, are you still not considered a newcomer? Li Luo glanced at the disciples behind Yun Ruoyu, who were trying their best to avoid her gaze. In that case, third miss, what makes a newcomer? Your residence of Yun actually has such a blind person as a disciple. Don't you think third miss needs to reorganize? Li Luo wasn't a hot-tempered person, but this time she was truly angered. Yun Ruoyan was the Slaughtering King's consort, and if word got out that she had been stopped at the door by her own family, she would be the laughingstock of the capital. Miss Li Luo. Yun Ruoyu glanced at Li Luo. This is the Yun Manor, not the Slaughtering King's Manor. It's not your place to lecture me on housekeeping. You haven't even married into my family yet, and you want to act like a matriarch? Even if you marry eldest brother with your status, you'll only be a concubine. Yun Ruoyu's words were harsh, and Li Luo wasn't a sharp-tongued person. Her face immediately turned red. Oh. Yun Ruoyan smiled faintly. Then do I have the right? Yun Ruoyu paused. Sister Ruoyan, it's true that the servants were rude to you today, but they don't know you, so there's no need to hold it against them. Besides, now that you've married into the slaughtering king's manor, you're one of us. You don't have to concern yourself with the family's affairs. I insist on getting involved today. Yun Ruoyan couldn't be bothered to waste her breath. She pointed at the disciple behind Yun Ruoyu. Get the hell out of the Yun manor right now. Yun Ruoyan had imbued her voice with spiritual energy, and her words were naturally intimidating. The servants by the side couldn't help but tremble, and the disciple even knelt on the ground. Yun Ruoyu was also shocked. In just 3 years Yun Ruoyan's cultivation had reached such a level. Sister, he's just a servant, so please don't get angry. Anger is bad for your health, and you have to take care of the child in your belly, Yun Ruoyu hurriedly said. She turned to the kneeling disciple. Leave the Yun manor right now. Then, she loudly announced to the surrounding servants, this is my second sister, and she's also the sole wife-born daughter of the Yun manor. In the future, all of you must be respectful when you see her, or else you'll have to leave the manor. Sister, now you're not angry anymore, are you? Yun Ruoyu appeared to be in a good mood. Yun Ruoyan nodded calmly. Is father at home? I'll go pay my respects. Father is, but he's in seclusion right now, so I'm afraid you won't be able to see him today. Yun Ruoyan's heart relaxed a little. Paying respects to Yun Lan was just a matter of routine, and she didn't want to. Then go pay your respects to grandmother, Yun Ruoyan replied casually. All right, I'll go with you, sister, Yun Ruoyu replied. Grandmother hasn't been feeling well lately, and the physician says that she needs to rest well. Sister, it's best if you don't stay too long in her quarters. When Yun Ruoyan entered her quarters, the Yun matriarch was resting in bed. When she saw Yun Ruoyan, she was so excited that she tugged at Yun Ruoyan's hand, unable to say a word. Grandmother, what's wrong? Yun Ruoyan asked. She's had a stroke for a year and she can't even speak now. How could she have a stroke? Hasn't grandmother always been in good health? Yun Ruoyan asked. The Yun matriarch wasn't just any old matriarch, she possessed spiritual energy. Although she was already 80 years old, her body had always been in good health. Yun Ruoyan was quite surprised that her grandmother would suddenly become like this. We don't know what happened either, Xiaolon replied. We don't know either. She suddenly had a stroke, and if not for her good health, she probably wouldn't have survived until now. She's getting older and she naturally suffers from all sorts of illnesses. Sister, don't be too sad. Yun Ruoyao looked at Xiaolon. Your grandmother's elder, so you have to take good care of her. Of course, 3rd Mississippi. Xiaolon bowed respectfully to Yun Ruoyao. The Yun matriarch had always been protective of Yun Ruoyan, and Yun Ruoyan still had some feelings for her. Seeing her like this today, Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel a little sour in her heart. By the time she wanted to say a few more words to the Yun matriarch, she had already fallen asleep. Ruoyu, father is in seclusion, brother has gone out to quell the rebellion, and grandmother is bedridden. Who's in charge of the household right now? Yun Ruoyan asked as they left the Yun matriarch's room. To tell you the truth, sister, I'm the one in charge of the household right now. Yun Ruoyan smiled. Yun Ruoyan glanced at Yun Ruoyao, but didn't say anything. After all, she was already married off, and it was impossible for her to return to the household. As long as Yun Ruoyao didn't do anything out of line, she wouldn't say anything. However, Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel that everything had changed since her return. As for what exactly was strange, she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Yun Ruoyan then returned to her own rooms, and Yun Ruoyao didn't follow her any longer. The main reason for her return this time was to take the 2 maidservants from the Yun manor with her. When she married into the slaughtering king's manor, she had to leave the 2 maidservants behind in the Yun manor because she was going to attend Kongming Academy. When Yun Ruoyan entered her rooms, she was surprised to find that it was completely deserted, and there wasn't a single servant in sight. Where's Xilan and Peony? Yun Ruoyan asked. They're married, Yun Ruoyao replied matter-of-factly. Yun Ruoyao replied matter-of-factly, I've been gone for 3 years and the 2 girls have grown old. They've also found lovers in the manor, so I decided to help them arrange their marriages. Where are they now? Yun Ruoyan subconsciously felt that this matter wasn't as simple as Yun Ruoyao had made it out to be. I've already sent someone to call them. Please wait a moment, sister. Yun Ruoyan didn't have to wait long before Xilan and Peony were led into the room by one of the maidservants, each with a child behind them. Miss. When the 2 maidservants saw Yun Ruoyan, their eyes reddened as they kowtowed to her. Hurry, get up. Yun Ruoyan hurriedly went to help them up. She looked at the boy and girl behind the two maidservants and was rather surprised. The two children looked to be only 2 or 3 years old. Could they be? Bao Jiao, come and kowtow to Miss. Peony immediately pulled the two children along. There. Oh, this boy is my child, Peony replied. Jiao is Xilan's child. You two already have children and they're all grown up. Yun Ruoyan smiled. I didn't expect that it had only been 3 years. 3 years isn't a short time, sister. Yun Ruoyao also smiled. Her smile caused both Bao and Jiao to tremble, as if they were very afraid of Yun Ruoyao. Sister, I'd like to speak with the two maidservants in private. If you're busy, please go ahead. All right, I'll leave you to it, Yun Ruoyu replied before leaving. Yun Ruoyan was almost certain that the two maidservants had suffered quite a bit while she was away. As soon as Yun Ruoyu left, she immediately asked about it. However, the two maidservants denied her thoughts, saying that they were doing well and telling her not to worry. I'm here to bring you to the manor, Yun Ruoyan began. Although I'll have to leave soon, Li Luo will take care of you while I'm here. Miss, if we were still single we would definitely follow you, miss, Peony continued. But now that Xilan and I are married and have children of our own husband, we'd like to stay at the Yun Manor. In the future, when you come back to visit us, we'll serve you. Xilan had been standing by the side, her eyes red. The usually talkative girl had become rather gloomy. Xilan, what do you think? Yun Ruoyan asked. Miss, I think the same way as Peony, Xilan replied. Yun Ruoyan hadn't been able to bring the two maidservants with her on this trip, and her mood had been rather gloomy. Upon returning to the manor, she felt that something must have happened, and that it had something to do with Yun Ruoyu. Before Liamo left, he had left behind 2 guards for Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan had instructed them to infiltrate the Yun Manor and see if there was anything amiss. Chapter 444. The next day Yun Ruoyan had just woken up and washed up when a guard came to inform her that a servant claiming to be the consort was requesting an audience. Yun Ruoyan immediately had the guard bring her in. Ling Lan greets Miss Yun. The servant was none other than Ling Lan. Quick, get up. Yun Ruoyan hurriedly helped Ling Lan up, as it was inconvenient for her to bend over. I heard from Xilan and Peony yesterday that your brother has brought you home. Yun Ruoyan held Ling Lan's hand and smiled. Are you doing well at home? Miss, don't worry about me. Brother has always been very good to me, Ling Lan replied. I'm here today to ask you to help Xilan and Sister Peony. Ling Lan's eyes reddened as she spoke and her voice began to choke. What happened to Xilan and Peony? Tell me slowly. Yun Ruoyan's expression froze. Ling Lan paused for a moment, then recounted to Yun Ruoyan everything that had happened in the 3 years since Yun Ruoyan's departure. Not long after Yun Ruoyao's departure, Yun Ruoyu, who had been cooped up in the plum clipping cottage, had slowly become more active. Because Yun Ruoyu was the only child left in the family, and Madame Qin was no longer around, everyone was exceptionally lenient toward Yun Ruoyu. Yun Ruoyu was also very obedient, and she quickly won the trust of her father and the favor of her grandmother. Yun Maxiao also became busier and busier, and Yun Lan gradually delegated the responsibilities of the imperial court to him while he spent almost all of his time cultivating. In the end, he spent many days in seclusion, and the Yun matriarch's health deteriorated by the day. As a result, Yun Ruoyu's responsibilities naturally fell on Yun Ruoyu's shoulders. At first, Yun Maxiao would ask about it, but Yun Ruoyu didn't dare act too presumptuously. Later, however, when Yun Maxiao led the army into battle, Yun Ruoyu no longer had any scruples. A month after Yun Maxiao's departure, less than half a year after Yun Ruoyan's departure, she forced Xilan and Peony to marry off to the most ordinary servant in the manor. Xilan and Peony would be beaten if they refused, and Yun Ruoyan would even threaten them with their lives. In the end, Xilan and Peony had no choice but to compromise. If my brother hadn't come to pick me up, I probably wouldn't have been able to escape the same fate as Xilan and Sister Peony. Xilan sobbed. But my brother was just a lowly official in the capital. He could only save me, but he couldn't do anything about Xilan and Sister Xiaoyao. I could only watch them suffer in the Yun Manor, but I couldn't do anything about it. But now that the young miss is back, I'm sure she'll be able to get justice for Xilan and Sister Xiaoyao. With a loud bang, Yun Ruoyan slammed her palm on the table beside her. The sturdy wooden table had actually been cracked open by Yun Ruoyan's palm. Ruoyan, don't get angry. Anger will harm your health, Li Luo hurriedly advised. Ling Lan was also frightened by Yun Ruoyan's anger, and she was so stunned that she even forgot to cry. Well done, Yun Ruoyu. Yun Ruoyan tried her best to calm her anger. Ever since she had become pregnant, she had been able to maintain a calm demeanor. However, whenever she thought of how much Xilan and Peony had suffered in her absence, she couldn't control her anger. Come on, let's go to the Yun Manor now. Yun Ruoyan shouted angrily. Second miss, why are you here so early? The newcomers to the Yun Manor had just opened the gates when they saw the slaughtering king's carriage parked outside. They immediately bowed and greeted her. Linglan, do you know where Peony and Xilan live? Take me there right now. Yun Ruoyan ignored the newcomers and walked straight into the manor. Yes, miss, please follow me. Linglan nodded and led the way. There was a secluded servants' courtyard in the Yun Manor, and there were two families living there, Xilan and Peony. At the moment, the two of them were busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Sister Peony, when the young miss returned yesterday, why didn't you let me tell her what happened? I'm sure she'll get justice for us, Xilan murmured. Of course she'll get justice for us, but what about Ah Bao and Ah Jiao? Have you forgotten what the third miss said before? Peony sighed. I pity those two children. If not for them, I'd rather die than stay here, Xilan said tearfully. Xilan, Peony, where's the washing water? Why haven't you prepared it yet? Are those two women tired of living? A bare-chested man walked out of the house and shouted into the kitchen. Xilan's body trembled, but she still put down the work in her hands and was about to leave when Peony pulled her back. You stay here, I'll go. Peony took a deep breath and walked out of the kitchen with a smile. Nyo-san, you're awake. Yes, where's that woman of mine? Hurry up and call her out to help me wash up. Nyo-san sat down on a stone bench in the middle of the courtyard. Xilan's cooking and the hot water's ready. I'll bring it to you in a moment. Who do you think you are? Call Xilan over. Nyo-san stood up and headed for the kitchen. What are you doing? Xilan's cooking. Peony blocked his path. Peony felt a burning sensation on one side of her face. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. After hitting the man, Nyo-san turned to the other room and called out, Brother, your woman isn't listening. I'll teach her a lesson for you. Hey, teach her what you need to, but don't disturb my sleep. Another man's voice came from the other room. Damn you, Nyo-san. I'll kill you. Xilan rushed out of the kitchen with a cleaver in her hand and swung it at Nyo-san. Wow, you've grown up. Nyo-san dodged to the side and kicked Xilan in the stomach, sending her flying to the ground. Xilan. Peony cried out and hurried over to help her up. Nyo-san, you animal. She's your wife. Peony cursed angrily. How dare you hit me with a cleaver? The third miss was right. You two are bitches. You won't listen unless you use extreme measures. Nyo-san walked over to the two of them and kicked them without a trace of politeness. How dare you hit me with a cleaver? I'll show you what I'm made of. Led by Linglan, Yun Ruoyan heard screams and the sounds of a beating even before they entered the courtyard. The three of them immediately quickened their pace. When Linglan pushed open the door to the courtyard and Yun Ruoyan saw Xilan and Peony being beaten up, her suppressed anger erupted like a volcano. Stop! Linglan and Li Luo shouted at the same time. At the same time, a scarlet ray of light flashed by and struck the leg that Nyo-san was using to kick Xilan and Peony. Nyo-san's leg was suddenly severed in midair. The scorching heat from the scarlet ray had scorched the wound, so strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Ah, my leg. My leg's gone. Nyo-san began to roll on the ground. Who's causing trouble so early in the morning? Can't you let me sleep? Nyo-air's voice came from within the house. Yun Ruoyan's face was as cold as ice. She gave Li Luo a look, and Li Luo walked into the house and dragged Nyo-air out. Xilan, Sister Peony. Linglan cried as she helped the two girls up, looking them up and down to see if they'd sustained any serious injuries. Miss, Peony and Xilan looked at Yun Ruoyan as if they wanted to say something. Peony was slightly better off, but Xilan's face was covered in tears. Yun Ruoyan looked at the two girls she'd lived with for so many years, her heart filled with both pain and anger. She wanted to scold them, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. The two girls didn't dare to speak when they saw Yun Ruoyan's expression. Ruoyan, what should we do with these two? Li Luo asked. Lock them up and follow me, Yun Ruoyan ordered, then turned and walked out of the courtyard. Yun Ruoyu had just gotten out of bed and washed up when one of her maids hurriedly reported to her. Miss, the second miss is here and she's very aggressive. Hurry, go out and take a look. Yun Ruoyu, come out. Yun Ruoyan's voice rang out in the courtyard. A cold glint flashed across Yun Ruoyu's eyes as she stood up and walked out of her bedroom. Sister, you just left yesterday. What's going on today? Yun Ruoyu's voice rang out before she even arrived. When she saw Yun Ruoyan, followed by Shilan and Peony as well as Nyo Air and Nyo San, who Li Luo was holding, she had an idea of what was going on. Sister, what are you trying to do? Yun Ruoyu asked, even though she already knew the answer. Yun Ruoyu, I don't want to waste words with you, but I have to demand an explanation for these two girls of mine. Yun Ruoyan glanced coldly at Hulk Air and Hulk San behind her. I haven't seen you in 3 years. Do you think that I've become a pushover? Did you think that I wouldn't be able to return? I won't be able to quell the hatred in my heart until I see blood. As soon as Yun Ruoyan finished speaking, she glanced at Nyoda and Nyo Air. A black light flashed and Nyoda and Nyo Air's heads fell to the ground. Fresh blood sprayed all over the ground, and the maidservants present screamed in fear. Yun Ruoyu hadn't expected that Yun Ruoyan would kill them just like that, and she was so shocked that she stood rooted to the ground. Shilan, Peony, Yun Ruoyan called out. Yes, Mississippi. Shilan immediately awoke from her daze. She nudged Peony, and the two of them walked to Yun Ruoyan's side. Among the maids and mothers present, which one of them has ever hit you? Those who have hit you will have their hands chopped off, and those who have hit you will have their legs chopped off, Yun Ruoyan said. There were more than a dozen maids and servants in Yun Ruoyu's courtyard, and when they heard Yun Ruoyan's words, their faces immediately paled. Shilan immediately opened her mouth to speak, but Peony pulled her back. Miss, the people here are all very polite to us, said Peony. Is that so? Yun Ruoyan turned to Peony and frowned. Why don't I see Ah Bao and Ah Jiao? I don't see any houses either, Li Luo replied. Shilan finally couldn't take it anymore. She knelt on the ground and cried, Miss, you have to help Sister Peony and Shilan. Chapter 445. Once Shilan opened her mouth, Peony couldn't stop her even if she wanted to. My Ah Bao and Ah Jiao were taken away by Miss Yun's servants the moment they were born, and we don't even see them once a month. Miss Yun even said that if we don't listen to her, we'll never see our children again. Yesterday, when Miss Yun came, she had us bring our children to pay our respects to her, but once she left, the children were taken away too. Miss Yun, you have to help us. Shilan cried pitifully, and Peony also began to cry by the side. Yun Ruoyu. Yun Ruoyan turned around and glared coldly at Yun Ruoyu. Where are their children? Bring them here right now. I'm taking them away from here today. Yun Ruoyan's murderous aura had scared Yun Ruoyu silly, and she had only just regained her composure. She straightened her back and bolstered her courage. Sister Ruoyan, this is the Yun Manor, and Shilan and Peony are servants of the Yun Manor. What you're doing is against the rules. Rules? Yun Ruoyan's gaze turned cold, and the black light that had sliced off two heads as easily as chopping vegetables appeared once more. The Phalai blade revolved slowly around Yun Ruoyan's body, causing her entire being to emanate a murderous aura. I've been in this alternate world for 3 years and all I know is that strength is the rule and killing is the law. Do you want to talk about rules or reason with me? Sister Ruoyan, I'm your sister. Are you going to kill me? Yun Ruoyu's expression was ugly. She had clearly been frightened, but in front of the servants, she forced herself to put up a front. As soon as Yun Ruoyu finished speaking, she let out a scream. The Phalai blade had suddenly cut off a strand of her hair. The Phalai blade sliced through Yun Ruoyu's hair, then flew around the courtyard, scaring all of the servants into squatting on the ground. Yun Ruoyu, I thought you'd come to your senses after what happened to your mother. Even if you can't become a good person, you'd at least have some peace and quiet. I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. After living in the same manner for so many years, you should know what kind of temper I have. Don't exhaust my patience. Of course I know. Yun Ruoyu had to be supported by one of the maids before she managed to stand up. She then turned to one of the maids beside her and instructed, Go and bring the children of those 2 maids here. I'm just trying to help them raise their children out of goodwill, but if my goodwill is treated as ill intent, I won't be a good person anymore. The 2 maidservants received the order and left. Not long after they returned with Ah Bao and Ah Jiao. Shilan and Peony hurriedly held their children in their arms. The treasures that had been stolen from them were finally back by their side. Both of them were crying and laughing at the same time, unable to contain their joy. Then I won't bother you today. Let's go. Yun Ruoyan said. I won't send you off, Yun Ruoyu's voice rang out from behind her. Yun Ruoyan stopped and turned back. Today's matter isn't over yet. When father comes out of seclusion, I'll find him to reason with. As Yun Ruoyu watched Yun Ruoyan's group disappear through the door, she clenched her fists so tightly that she almost bled. Miss, now that second miss is back, I'm afraid our days won't be good, said a maid at the side. Tui? What kind of miss is she? She's just a bastard child born from her mother's affair with another man. Yun Ruoyu spat. How infuriating. If not for the fact that she's the slaughtering king's consort, how could I possibly call her sister? Come, let's go to Fenghua's quarters. Yun Lan was currently in seclusion in Fenghua's quarters. Yun Ruoyu still remembered that her father had brought her here half a year ago, and that she had been surprised to find such a place in the home she had lived in for more than a decade. I'm nearing the end of my cultivation, and I'll be secluding myself here for 81 days. I'll leave the affairs of the manor to you for the time being, and unless it's something important, don't disturb me. This was what Yun Lan had told her before he went into seclusion. Now that Yun Ruoyan was back, it must be something important. Yun Ruoyu passed through the array that Yun Lan had set up and entered Fenghua's quarters alone. As soon as she entered, she heard Yun Lan's voice. What's the matter? Yun Ruoyu stopped in her tracks. Father, Sister Ruoyan's back and she came to visit me yesterday and today. Yesterday I wasn't a good host and she even threw a tantrum. Yesterday she chased away one of her disciples and today she killed 2 servants for no reason. Father, do you want to see her? I'm afraid that she'll do something bad tomorrow, and even as her sister, I can't stop her. I understand. Don't bother with her. I'll meet her when I'm out of seclusion. If there's nothing else you can leave, Yun Lan said coldly. Yes, father. Yun Ruoyu looked at the house in front of her, but all 4 of its windows were shut, and she couldn't see what was inside. Father, would the statues of the Buddha and Bodhisattva be of help to your cultivation? Yun Ruoyu asked. Not bad, Yun Lan replied. When I've mastered the technique, I'll definitely reward you handsomely. The statues that Yun Ruoyu mentioned were none other than the demonic creatures that Qin Jianmei had left behind, the reincarnated Buddha and the reincarnated Bodhisattva. That day Yun Ruoyan had thrown these 2 creatures into the fire, but Yun Ruoyu, who had been hiding nearby, had saved them. She had intended to continue cultivating according to the method that Qin Jianmei had taught her, but she hadn't expected Yun Lan to come looking for her. What was even more surprising was that Yun Lan had directly demanded that she hand over the reincarnated Buddha and the reincarnated Bodhisattva. Yun Ruoyu didn't know how Yun Lan knew about these 2 demonic creatures that her mother had spent most of her life cultivating, but she didn't have the courage to refuse. She could only hand them over. After that, Yun Lan began to cultivate in seclusion with the 2 demonic creatures, and she became the caretaker of the Yun Manor. Yun Ruoyu felt that her current situation was quite good. She didn't have much talent for cultivation, and compared to being trapped in the plum-clipping cottage every day, Yun Ruoyu preferred the feeling of being the matriarch of the household. If Yun Ruoyan had never returned, Yun Ruoyu would have been satisfied. But now that Yun Ruoyan had returned, and not only had she returned, she was even lecturing her as an outsider. This made her feel very dissatisfied. Yun Lan was currently engrossed in his cultivation, and he couldn't be bothered with anything else. Since Yun Lan couldn't be counted on, Yun Ruoyu could only rely on herself. Thankfully she had a trick up her sleeve. Yun Ruoyan, you're the one who asked for it. Don't blame me. Yun Ruoyu smiled coldly as she left the cottage. Within the brothel, the 2 demonic creatures, the reincarnated Buddha and the reincarnated Bodhisattva, were placed in front of Yun Lan. Yun Lan's face alternated between green and red, a sign that his blood was surging. After a long while, he forced the blood to the tips of his fingers, and 2 beads of spiritual energy appeared between his fingers. Yun Lan dripped the blood onto the 2 demonic creatures, and as soon as the blood touched their bodies, it was instantly absorbed. Then the 2 demonic creatures' eyes glowed red. I finally saved him. That's great. Yun Lan's face was pale, but his expression was one of excitement and joy. He stood up, picked up the 2 glowing demonic creatures in front of him, and walked into the brothel. There was a crystal-clear bed of frosty jade in the room, and the chilly air that permeated the room was coming from this bed. There was a person lying on the bed. The chilly air on the bed was so thick that it obscured the person's appearance, but a red robe clearly indicated that the person lying on the bed was a woman. Yun Lan walked to the side of the cold jade bed and placed the 2 demonic creatures on either side of the bed. Yueme, I can finally save you. Yun Lan's voice was almost a whisper. I've guarded you for so many years and I've finally found a way to wake you up, ha. Yun Lan chuckled and reached out to dispel the chilly air in front of Lin Yueme. A young, beautiful face appeared in front of Yun Lan's eyes. If Yun Ruoyan had been present, she would have been shocked by this face because it looked so much like her. Other than the fainter eyebrows and the thinner and sharper chin, The shape of the face and facial features were almost identical. She was the mother that Yun Ruoyan had been searching for all this time. Lin Yueme? At first, everyone thought that Lin Yueme was dead, but when they discovered that her tomb was empty, they began to wonder if she was still alive. From then on, the Lin family had never stopped searching for her. Unexpectedly, however, Yun Lan had hidden Lin Yueme in her former residence, the Fanghua residence. Yueme, you won't blame me for placing you on this ice-cold bed all these years, will you? Yun Lan gently caressed Lin Yueme's face. There's nothing I can do. Only this bed of ice from the far north can keep you in this state forever. Only then would I have enough time to find a way to save you. Now I finally found it. After 49 days of blood transfusion, I finally managed to revive these two demonic Buddhas. They possess the power of reincarnation, and in 32 days, I'll be able to snatch you back from the hands of the King of Hell. At that time, Xiao, and I will be able to reunite as a family of 3. What do you think? And Ruoyan, you've always missed her the most. She's safely returned from the other world, and as long as you're awake, you'll be able to see her. Although she's not my daughter, as long as you like her, I'll treat her as my own. As long as you're awake, I'll do anything you want. The Fanghua residence was quiet, and all the doors and windows were tightly shut. The room was illuminated by luminous pearls, and the air was cold and gloomy. There was almost no difference between night and day. Outside the window, 2 black-robed men were lying in ambush. One of them gestured to the other to return and report the situation, while he himself remained hidden. The man understood the gesture and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a voice from within the room. Who's there? Immediately after, the window was opened and Yun Lan leaped out. Yun Lan suddenly launched a spirit force attack at the 2 hidden men in midair. Chapter 446. One of the men wasn't able to dodge in time and was struck by Yun Lan's spiritual attack, falling from the eaves onto the corridor. The other man dodged the spirit power attack and fought with Yun Lan, but he was obviously not Yun Lan's opponent and was beaten to the point where he couldn't fight back. The injured man in the corridor leapt up and attacked Yun Lan's back, but Yun Lan turned around and sent another spiritual attack at him. The injured man managed to dodge the attack this time, but he had been severely injured. Even if he managed to dodge the attack this time, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. "Fourth brother, let's go," the injured man called out to the other man before engaging Yun Lan once more. "Third brother, let's go together. The mission's more important. Go." The injured man called out anxiously as he clung to Yun Lan. He wouldn't be able to hold on for long. As soon as the uninjured man heard the word mission, his rationality overcame everything else. He looked at the injured man, clenched his teeth, summoned his flying sword and flew away. Yun Lan saw that the other man was about to escape. He sent the man clinging to him flying with a single palm strike, then chased after the fleeing man. That fleeing man's cultivation wasn't as high as Yun Lan's, but his flying sword was so fast that Yun Lan couldn't catch up. In a fit of anger, he used all his strength to attack the fleeing man's back. Whether or not it hit, the fleeing man disappeared into the horizon. Yun Lan stared at the disappearing man before turning back to the injured man. Just as he was about to kill him, the man's head tilted to the side. He had consumed poison to commit suicide. Yun Lan brought his servants back to the slaughtering king's manor. "Sister Shilan, Sister Peony, from now on, you won't have to suffer any more," Ling Lan exclaimed happily. "That's right," Li Luo replied. "Since Ruoyan's back, why didn't you say anything about the 2 of you suffering at the Yun Manor? I didn't sleep well last night because of you too. We were the ones who didn't know any better. Miss, can you not be angry at us?" Shilan whispered to her. Yun Ruoyan didn't say a single word on the way back to the manor. Even after they entered the manor, her expression was still grim, and she had no intention of speaking up. "I'm sorry, Mississippi. We've made you worry." Peony knelt down with Ah Bao in her arms. Shilan also knelt down with Ah Jiao in her arms. Seeing this, Yun Ruoyan's face couldn't hold back any longer. "Get up, all of you. If the young miss doesn't forgive us, then we won't get up. We'll kneel until the young miss forgives us," said Peony. "Yes, we will kneel until miss forgives us," Shilan echoed. "Done." Yun Ruoyan sighed and sat down on a chair. "I'm not angry at the 2 of you. I'm angry at myself. Why didn't I ask for both of you when I married into the family? I've made you suffer so much these few years. Don't worry, when Master Yun comes out of seclusion, I will definitely seek justice for you." When she thought of how her 2 obedient servants had been betrothed to that scum by Yun Ruoyu, and how they had been abused every day, forced to endure the pain of being separated from their mother and children, she couldn't help but blame herself. With your words, miss, even if we were to die, it would be worth it. Xilan and Peony were helped up by Li Luo and Ling Lan. After crying for a while longer, they finally let go of their grief and prepared to welcome a brand new life. Yun Ruoyan saw that Ah Bao and Ah Jiao weren't crying or making a fuss, and they didn't look too energetic. They had probably been carried up so early in the morning. She instructed Li Luo to bring them to breakfast, then had them settle down in the courtyard to rest. Ling Lan followed her. After the crowd left, Yun Ruoyan sat alone in the living room. Perhaps because she had been too agitated early in the morning, now that she was quiet, her stomach began to rumble. The little fellow was almost turning over in her stomach. Although Yun Ruoyan was uncomfortable, she was still happy that the little fellow was healthy and full of energy. Don't worry, you'll be able to come out in a month's time. At that time, I'll have your father carry you on his sword. You'll be much more spacious than Mommy's stomach. Yun Ruoyan stroked her belly as she spoke softly to the child. Suddenly, a black figure rushed in from outside and knelt down in front of Yun Ruoyan. Sushi greets your highness. How come you're the only one back? Where's Su Dong? Your highness, we didn't encounter anything suspicious when we followed Miss Yun. However, after you left the Yun Manor, Miss Yun went to a place in the manor known as the Fanghua Gardens. It's a very well-hidden place and there's even a maze formation outside. Third brother and I followed Miss Yun into the gardens, and only then did we find out that official Yun was in seclusion there. The three of us stayed in the gardens to see if there was anything suspicious, and we really did find something strange. What strange place? Yun Ruoyan asked. Third brother and I were hiding outside the window downstairs, and we heard official Yun talking to someone in the house. I heard him call that person Lin Yueme. What? Yun Ruoyan stood up immediately. Say that again. Lin Yueme, your highness. I wouldn't have heard wrongly, Sushi replied confidently. Su Bei, Su Nan, Su Shi, and Su Dong were the cream of the crop of the Ink Guards, and Yun Ruoyan didn't doubt their abilities. She had only asked that question out of surprise. Yun Ruoyan suppressed her shock, surprise, and other complex emotions. Sushi continue. Our original plan was for me to return and report on the situation, while third brother stayed behind to continue hiding. Just as I was about to leave, official Yun discovered us, and third brother stayed behind to delay him while I rushed back. At this point, Sushi's eyes dimmed. Sushi, don't worry. I'll head to the Yun Manor right now to save Su Dong. There's no need, your highness. Third brother isn't official Yun's match, and he wouldn't allow himself to be captured alive. He's probably committed suicide by now. Sushi spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Sushi. Yun Ruoyan hurried forward, only to see that his chest was soaked in blood. Because he was dressed in black, it was hard to tell. By the time Li Luo had settled Xilan and Peony in, she was shocked to see Sushi lying on the ground. She hurriedly said that she'd call for a physician. There's no need, Yun Ruoyan replied. Spiritual energy pierced through his heart, and not even miraculous pills can save him. Yun Ruoyan gently closed Sushi's eyes. Only one of Li Mo's guards would be able to rush back to complete his mission despite having his heart pierced. When will Li Mo return? Yun Ruoyan asked. His Highness has been gone for 2 days, and I'm afraid this matter isn't as simple as it seems, Li Luo replied. But since you're about to give birth, His Highness should be back soon. If not for her pregnancy, Yun Ruoyan would have rushed to the Yun Manor immediately. Even if she couldn't do it in the open, she could at least do it at night to verify the intelligence that Su Dong and Sushi had risked their lives to obtain. But now she had no choice but to take care of her own health. Yun Ruoyan pondered for a long time, but she knew that she wouldn't get the answer she wanted. Yun Ruoyan had some understanding of Yun Lan's cultivation, and she knew that she was no match for him. 2 of the guards had already been sacrificed, and she couldn't allow anyone else in the manor to risk their lives. In that case, she could only wait for Li Mo's return. Yun Ruoyan didn't go anywhere over the past 2 days, simply waiting for Li Mo's return. The Lin sisters came by once, but Yun Ruoyan didn't tell them about Lin Yueme. If they knew that they had accidentally revealed the truth in front of Lin Zainin, the old man would surely be agitated. Once Lin Zainin was agitated, he might even charge into the Yun Manor, but that wouldn't solve the problem. As a result, Yun Ruoyan didn't mention the matter, instead using her fatigue as an excuse to send her sisters away. Before leaving, Lin Qingchen told Yun Ruoyan that Whitey had undergone a shocking transformation, and that she should pay it a visit when it was better. Back on the Dark Abyss continent, Pai Badian had been incinerated by the demonic dragon patriarch's spiritual flames. However, the ring had been made of a special material that had managed to survive the flames, and Yun Ruoyan had returned it to Lin Qingchen. When Lin Qingchen returned to the Lin Manor, she placed Whitey back in the pond. Perhaps because the spiritual energy on the Xuanhuan continent was relatively dense, Whitey had undergone an astonishing transformation. Lin Qingchen had come to the Lin Manor with the intention of bringing Yun Ruoyan to visit the Lin Manor, but when she saw that Yun Ruoyan wasn't feeling well, she couldn't force her. "Sister, when you're feeling better, you have to come to the Lin Manor and bring brother-in-law with you. You'll be shocked to see Whitey," Lin Qingxua said. "All right, when Liemo returns I'll bring him with me." Yun Ruoyan smiled. After sending off the Lin sisters, Yun Ruoyan's smile immediately turned serious. The events of the past few days had been very upsetting. She lay down on a soft mattress to take a nap. Although her body was resting, her mind was filled with thoughts about her mother Lin Yueme, her father Long Yin, and Yun Lan, who had called her father all these years but had no blood relation to her at all. By the time Yun Ruoyan woke up groggily, it was already dusk. She was covered with a blanket and there was a cold snack on the table. Li Luo had probably prepared it, but she hadn't woken her up. Her stomach really did feel a little empty. Although she wouldn't feel hungry, the child in her womb needed nourishment, and Yun Ruoyan needed to eat. She got off the mattress and prepared to head out in search of something to eat. As soon as she stepped out of the door, she bumped into Xilan and Peony, who were carrying boxes of food. "Miss, where are you going?" "Xilan and I made these, Mississippi. They're your favorite osmanthus cakes as well as phoenix stamen soup. Have a taste, Mississippi. I was just about to head out in search of something to eat when you brought it here." Yun Ruoyan smiled. "We're telepathically connected to you, miss, and we knew that you'd be hungry by now," Xilan replied. Chapter 447. Yun Ruoyan followed Xilan and Peony back into the house. Peony placed the food box on the table and Xilan helped her open it. A familiar floral aroma wafted out. "Wow, it smells so good." Yun Ruoyan exclaimed with a satisfied expression. "Your cooking skills haven't deteriorated at all. In fact, they've improved." Xilan accidentally knocked over the teacup on the table and it fell to the ground. She looked at the broken teacup on the ground with a nervous expression. Why are you so clumsy?" Peony hurriedly exclaimed, even reaching out to push Xilan away. Xilan's face was bright red as if she had done something terribly wrong. Yun Ruoyan, on the other hand, was stunned by the two girls' exaggerated reactions. She smiled. "It's fine, it's a good omen. Miss, I'm so clumsy. I'll go clean up." Xilan hurriedly went out to get a broom and swept away the broken pieces. "Just leave it by the door. Be careful not to hurt your hands." Yun Ruoyan saw that Xilan was about to walk out of the courtyard. "A servant will come and clean it tonight, so just leave it by the door." Yun Ruoyan personally took out the osmanthus cake and phoenix flower soup from the basket. By the time she was done, Xilan had just walked in. "You haven't eaten either, have you? Let's eat together." "No, we've all eaten." This is for you, miss," Xilan said before standing obediently by Peony's side. Yun Ruoyan felt a little strange. What was wrong with these two girls today? They'd always been beasts, so why were they so reserved today? As Yun Ruoyan was thinking about this, her stomach began to rumble. It wasn't that she was hungry, but that the little fellow in her stomach was hungry. Without thinking too much, Yun Ruoyan picked up a piece of cake and started to eat. "Miss," Peony and Xilan called out at almost the same time. "What's the matter?" Yun Ruoyan opened her mouth, then closed it again. "No, nothing," Peony replied. "Eat slowly and don't choke. Also, the soup's a little hot, so drink it slowly," Xilan added. Yun Ruoyan tilted her head. "You two girls must be busy. I'll talk to you after I'm full." As she spoke, she popped a third of the cake into her mouth. It is indeed a familiar taste. Delicious. Yun Ruoyan was very satisfied. She took another sip of the phoenix stamen soup and said, "You don't know, but in the alternate world, these were the two things I wanted the most." "Miss, these two are too sweet." "Don't eat too much," said Peony. Yes, it's not good to be too sweet. Don't eat too much. We'll make more for Miss tomorrow," Xilan said. Yun Ruoyan waved her hand and smiled. "Don't worry, I've already abstained from eating. I don't usually eat much, but it's rare that I have an appetite today. It's fine if I eat a little more." As she ate, Yun Ruoyan's expression suddenly changed. A strange, stabbing pain suddenly appeared in her abdomen. With a clatter, the spoon fell from Yun Ruoyan's hands onto the floor. She clutched her stomach, a pained expression on her face. The pain grew exponentially until it drained all the energy in her body. Her body went limp and she almost fell off the stool. Miss, what's wrong? Peony and Xilan were clearly frightened, and they hurriedly helped her up. Mistress, what's wrong? Qiuqiu had also sensed Yun Ruoyan's abnormality. My stomach suddenly hurts as if I've been poisoned. But Peony and Xilan, how could they have poisoned me? Yun Ruoyan stared at Xilan and Peony in disbelief. Both of them saw that Yun Ruoyan's face was ashen, and beads of sweat were dripping down her face. Frightened, they kept asking Yun Ruoyan what was wrong. Xilan, hurry up and call Miss Li Luo. I'll stay here with the mistress, so hurry up and go. Alright, I'll go. Xilan was so flustered that she almost knocked into the door frame. Peony, it wasn't you, was it? Yun Ruoyan asked, enduring the pain. Miss, don't scare me. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Peony kept apologizing, but Yun Ruoyan's heart sank. She slowly closed her eyes. Not far from the Beastman's Valley, there was a small house where Liemo was talking to Su Nan and Su Bei. Your Highness, we followed your lead and found that the missing members of our Beastman Valley have appeared in the Yuelu Villa, Su Nan reported. So it was them, Liemo murmured coldly. It looks like the head of the Yuelu Villa can't be allowed to live. Your Highness, he's the fourth prince's maternal grandfather. Now that both grandfather and grandson have pledged their allegiance to Li Xuanhuan, wouldn't killing them bring disaster to the Beastmen Valley? Su Bei asked worriedly. Su Bei had been paying close attention to the happenings in the capital, and he was quite familiar with Li Xuanhuan. He was the son of a maidservant, and his status in the palace had always been low. Ever since he was young, he had relied on the crown prince to survive. However, such a person who no one had ever paid any attention to, was able to personally end his father's life, imprison his big brother, and then calmly ascend to the throne. Such a person was worthy of Su Bei's classification as a dangerous person. I've never wanted to get involved in the affairs of the Li Kingdom, Liemo replied coolly. But if they dare threaten my kin, I won't let them off lightly. The two of you take my orders to the Yuelu Villa. If they obediently hand over the man and promise not to harm us again, then we'll forget about it. If not, don't blame me for razing the entire villa to the ground. Liemo had two bottom lines. One was Yun Ruoyan and the other was his clansmen. Liemo couldn't be bothered to care about most matters, but once these two bottom lines were crossed, blood would flow like a river, and he wouldn't rest until he was dead. Yes, Your Highness, we'll do as you say. Su Bei and Su Nan turned and walked out of the room. As soon as the two of them left, a large bird flew in their direction. The two of them recognized it as a spiritual beast that had been tamed by their lord. It was specifically used to deliver letters. Was more than twice its usual size, and there was only one circumstance in which it would use such a large form to deliver a letter: if the contents of the letter were extremely urgent. The two of them paused for a moment, but just as they were about to continue walking, a gust of black wind suddenly blew past them. When they looked closely, they realized that it wasn't the black wind, but Liemo had already flown into the skies on his sword. The letter he had received from him only contained 6 words. Her Highness has been poisoned and she's in danger. Liemo returned to the Slaughtering King's manor 4 hours later. Yen. Liemo rushed to the courtyard where he and Yun Ruoyan were staying. When Li Luo heard his voice, she rushed out to greet him with reddened eyes. Your Highness, you're back. Let's go see Her Highness. Liemo hurriedly followed Li Luo into the room. Yun Ruoyan was lying on the bed, her forehead beaded with sweat. Her face was pale, but she was still conscious. Yener. Limeo's legs actually turned to jelly when he saw Yun Ruoyan in such a state. He half squatted by Yun Ruoyan's bedside and held her hand, his voice trembling. Are you all right? Yun Ruoyan gritted her teeth and shook her head, forcing a smile onto her face. The strange pain in her stomach was driving her to the brink of collapse. She didn't dare open her mouth for fear that she would scream out loud. Yun Ruoyan was a person who could endure pain very well, and she had never screamed in pain in either her past life or her current one. Liemo placed his hand gently on Yun Ruoyan's abdomen and used his spiritual energy to examine her condition. Apart from the child in her womb being abnormally active, Yun Ruoyan's body was fine. Her spiritual vortex and bodily functions were all perfectly normal. Physician, how's Her Highness? Liemo turned to the physician by his side. Your Highness, Her Highness ate poisoned food, causing her to go into labor prematurely. Will she be in danger? Her Highness is a cultivator, and her constitution seems to be quite unique, so the poison didn't harm her. However, it's hard to say for the child in her womb, the physician replied. When Liemo heard that Yunruoyan wasn't in danger, his heart finally returned to the ground. But when he heard that the child might be in danger, his heart immediately began to race again. Both the mother and child must be protected, Liemo replied. I'll do my best to ensure the safety of Her Highness and her child, the physician replied. After a moment of hesitation, he continued, if we really can't protect both of them, Your Highness, what should I do? Protect Her Highness. Liemo didn't hesitate in the slightest. You must protect Her Highness. Yes, Your Highness. The physician began to perform acupuncture on Yunruoyan. No, protect. Yunruoyan wanted to say protect the child, but her eyelids grew heavier and heavier, and she fell asleep before she could finish her sentence. Yunruoyan had a dream. In the dream there was an extremely cute little boy. The boy had a head of jet black hair, and he had a pair of eyes that could change color. Sometimes they were black, sometimes they were blue, and sometimes they were scarlet red. When the boy smiled, he revealed 2 canine teeth and was very cute. Sun Moyan, Yunruoyan subconsciously called out. Yunruoyan said subconsciously, Sun Moyan, let's go home. Father, grandfather, and grandmother are all waiting for us. Yes, mother. Sun Moyan bounced toward Yunruoyan, then held Yunruoyan's hand with his chubby little hand. In a childish voice he said, Daddy said that mother has a poor sense of direction, and he told me not to lose you. As soon as the child finished speaking, a green sword aura appeared beneath his feet. Yunruoyan recognized that it was indeed Liemo's azure light sword. When the child saw Yunruoyan staring at the sword aura, he proudly said, This was given to me by Daddy. He said that as long as I could learn sword kinesis within 3 days, he would give me the azure dragon sword. In the end, I learned it in less than 3 days. Mother, don't you think I'm amazing? Amazing, our Sun Moyan is the most amazing, Yunruoyan praised. Chapter 448. The dream continued. Little Sun Moyan rode on his sword, soaring through the sky with Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan suddenly spoke up. Isn't the sky more comfortable than being in my stomach? I almost didn't give birth to you back then. What's wrong? Mother, did something terrible happen? Sun Moyan turned to Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan pinched his cute cheeks and smiled. When I was pregnant with you, someone drugged me, causing me to go into labor prematurely. Yunruoyan's mind suddenly went blank. She couldn't remember how she had given birth to this child, or how she had raised him to this age. Yunruoyan covered her face with her hands, trying to wake herself up so that she could recall this blank memory, but it was still a blank, as if it had never appeared in her mind. Suddenly Yunruoyan's body swayed, and she hurriedly moved her hands away. She found herself standing alone on the sword, and Sun Moyan had disappeared. Moyan, Sun Moyan. Yunruoyan screamed, but the adorable child who had called her mother had disappeared, as if he had never appeared in the first place. Liemo walked out of the room exhausted. He looked as if he had just returned from a battlefield, even more exhausted than after a battle. Your Highness, how's the young miss? How's she? Peony and Xilan walked to Liemo's side and asked anxiously. Why did you poison Yen'er? Liemo asked coldly. We didn't know it was poison, Xilan cried. If we'd known it was poison, we wouldn't have given it to the young miss, even if the third miss wanted to kill us all. The third miss of the Yin Manor, Yunruoyu? Liemo asked. Yes, Yunruoyu, Peony replied. She gave me and Xilan's child a slow-acting poison, then used our child's life to threaten us to give it to the young miss. She said that the poison would only cause the young miss's cultivation to stagnate, and wouldn't harm her life. How could you believe that? Li Luo shouted. We didn't believe it at first, but she said that Miss is now the slaughtering king's consort, and she didn't dare to harm Miss's life. She was just afraid that Miss's cultivation would become more and more powerful, which would be detrimental to her, so... Before Peony could finish her sentence, Liemo kicked her to the ground. What a good girl. To think that Yen'er doted on you so much and brought you into the mansion, but you're just too heartless and brainless trash. If Yen'er can't pass this trial, I'll make sure all of you accompany him in death. Xilan prostrated on the ground and said, Your Highness, we deserve to die 10,000 times. We have let down the young miss and Your Highness. We are not worthy of being personally punished by Your Highness. We will end our own lives now. After saying that, she climbed up and suddenly bumped into the stone railing at the side. Xilan, wait for me. I'm coming with you. Peony said as she bumped into Xilan. Within the Yun Manor, Boland's courtyard. Miss, there's news that the second miss has given birth prematurely in the manor, and both mother and child are in critical condition. A maid hurriedly ran into Yun Ruoyu's bedroom and reported to Yun Ruoyu. Really? Yun Ruoyan had been sitting in front of her dressing table, removing her makeup and preparing to go to bed. As soon as she heard the news, she suddenly stood up, her drowsiness instantly disappearing. Wonderful. I've been waiting for this day. Yun Ruoyu paced around the room excitedly, muttering, "The heavens have eyes." Yun Ruoyan, you didn't expect such a day to come for you, did you? If only you'd kept a low profile just like when you were a little girl. Why did you suddenly seem like a completely different person? Yun Ruoyu couldn't help but think back to the days when she, Yun Ruoyao, and Yi Qianying had bullied Yun Ruoyan together. Back then Yun Ruoyan had been a good girl. Even when she was bullied, she would silently endure it, and she would always cower in front of them. But at some point, such a cute, docile person had suddenly become so detestable. She had become more and more powerful, more and more difficult to understand. Now that she thought about it, none of the changes that had happened to the Yun family in the past few years could be attributed to Yun Ruoyan. In Yun Ruoyu's heart, Yun Ruoyao had died, Madame had gone crazy, and her mother had died. All of this had been caused by Yun Ruoyan. And when Yun Ruoyu found out from Qin Jianmei that Yun Ruoyan wasn't even of the Yun family's bloodline, but rather that her mother had conceived an illegitimate child with another man, Yun Ruoyu felt even more indignant. This is retribution. You're an outsider, and you're the sole wife-born daughter of the Yun family. Now that you're dead, you deserve it. Yun Ruoyu's expression was savage because of her excitement. You didn't expect that the two girls you were so protective of would poison you, did you? It must feel terrible to be betrayed by your own people. Don't blame me, I'm just enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. If anything happens to Yen, I swear I'll skin you alive. Just as Yun Ruoyu was in the midst of her excitement, a cold, angry male voice suddenly rang out from behind her. Yun Ruoyu slowly turned around to see Liemo standing not far behind her. Yun Ruoyu couldn't help but scream as she pointed at Liemo. How did you get in here? What are you trying to do? Help me. Yun Ruoyan had been woken up by a nightmare. When she woke up, she was drenched in cold sweat and Liemo was lying by her side. Yun Ruoyan reached out to pull on Liemo's large hand, and he immediately woke up. Ruoyan, you're awake? Liemo's eyes were dark and glossy, and he didn't know how long it had been since he last slept. You're finally awake. You scared me to death, Yin. How long have I been asleep? Yun Ruoyan asked, her voice so weak that it was almost a gasp. You've been asleep for almost 10 days, Liemo replied. I've actually been asleep for 10 days. Yun Ruoyan rubbed her forehead. Liemo, help me up. Liemo propped Yun Ruoyan up on the bed. As soon as Yun Ruoyan sat up, she immediately felt something amiss. Her eyes widened as she looked at her abdomen, which was completely flat. Where's the child? Yun Ruoyan grabbed Liemo's arm in fear. Liemo, where's our child? The dream of the child's sudden disappearance flooded Yun Ruoyan's mind, causing her to panic even more. Yun Ruoyan clutched Liemo's arm as tightly as she could, her already large eyes widening as she stared at him. Yin, don't be afraid. Listen to me. Liemo pulled Yun Ruoyan into his embrace and patted her back comfortingly. Our child's fine, he's fine. Really? Yun Ruoyan struggled out of Liemo's embrace, but she continued to stare at him with her large eyes. Liemo's heart ached to see her like this. Of course I'm telling the truth. When have I ever lied to you? Liemo wasn't wrong. He had never intentionally lied to Yun Ruoyan. The child was still here just now. The nanny carried him out to feed him, and Li Luo will bring him back in after she's done. Look, that's our child's bed. Liemo pointed at the crib by the side. Is our son really fine? Yun Ruoyan finally let out a sigh of relief and collapsed into Liemo's embrace. That's great, our son's fine. With me here you'll all be fine, Liemo assured her. Yin, how did you know that he's still a son? Liemo's tone turned resolute as he lowered his head to look at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan's lips curled up in a gentle smile. I had a dream. In the dream there was a little boy who called me mother. He was very cute with a head of black hair. The strangest thing about him was his eyes, which could change color, sometimes black, sometimes blue, and sometimes scarlet. He was also very smart, learning how to fly on a sword in less than 3 days. All right, have you given him a name yet? Not yet. I'm waiting for you to name him together with me, Liemo replied. I do have a name in mind, but I'd like to wait for you to name him. Let's see if our names are the same. As she spoke, Yun Ruoyan fell asleep again. When she woke up again, she saw her and Liemo's child in front of her. The child was the same as in her dream, with black hair, fair skin and large black eyes that did not change color. Liemo said that the child was still young, and many of his special abilities couldn't be revealed yet. This was the first child in history to possess both the demonic and silver dragon bloodlines. Because there were no precedents, his special abilities were unknown, but they were certain to be very powerful. When it came time to name the child, Xuanhuan and Liemo each took a pen and wrote down the name they had in mind. When they looked closely, they found that their names were exactly the same. Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan and Liemo read out the name at the same time. Liemo thought that Xuanhuan would write it as Li. His original surname was Sun, but he had always used it in public. Alright, the child's name will be Xuanhuan, and his nickname will be Li Yan. Liemo caressed Xuanhuan's face as he slept quietly in Xuanhuan's arms. 3 days later, Xuanhuan's body was getting better, but the doctor told her to stay in bed. Ruoyan, Peony and Xilan have been kneeling outside for 2 days and 2 nights. Have you thought of what to do with them? Li Luo asked casually, then took Li Yen from Xuanhuan's arms and went to change his diaper. Xuanhuan stared blankly. They've been kneeling outside for 2 days? Liemo had forbidden his servants to tell Xuanhuan about this matter, and only Li Luo had dared to tell her in secret. Based on His Highness's personality in the past, those 2 girls wouldn't have survived until now. Li Luo's hands were busy, and she didn't even raise her head. But His Highness knew that you had a deep relationship with them, so he hesitated to punish them. Logically speaking, they should be punished for murdering their mistress and causing you and the young master to suffer so much. However, the 2 of them were also bewitched and threatened, and they were so remorseful that they both committed suicide to atone for their sins. If His Highness hadn't protected them with spiritual energy, they would have died on the spot. Sister Li Luo, Xuanhuan called out. Let them in. Chapter 449. Li Luo walked in with Peony and Xilan. As soon as the 2 maids saw Xuanhuan, they knelt down. Miss, we've let you down. We deserve to die. Miss, please punish us severely. The 2 maids were practically prostrating themselves on the ground, too ashamed to raise their heads to look at Xuanhuan. Are Abao and Ajiao feeling better? Xuanhuan asked coolly. Both of them, Peony replied, choking on her words. His Highness brought us the antidote. Because we were poisoned too deeply, we won't be able to fully recover in a short period of time. However, the physician said that our lives won't be in danger after taking the antidote, and that we'll be able to recover with time. Miss, we harmed you, but you and His Highness are still willing to spare our lives and save our children. Xilan cried. We really won't be able to repay your kindness in our next life. When Xuanhuan found out that these 2 maids, whom she had always trusted so much, had poisoned her, she had been very disappointed and hurt. But now that she was a mother herself, she knew that a mother would sometimes do things for her children that she herself wouldn't be able to forgive. Moreover, these 2 maids had been deceived. Li Luo has told me everything about you, Xuanhuan replied coolly. You've all been used by Xuanhuo. She's cunning and vicious, and she's your mistress, so it's understandable that you'd be controlled by her. Miss, the 2 maids slowly raised their heads and looked at Xuanhuan gratefully. However, Xuanhuan's tone suddenly turned cold. But I can't keep anyone who's betrayed me by my side, no matter the reason. Peony and Xilan lowered their heads again, tears welling up in their eyes and dripping onto the floor, making a large patch of the floor wet. Li Luo, arrange for them to leave, Xuanhuan ordered. Li Luo glanced at Xuanhuan as if she wanted to say something, but ultimately decided against it. Yes, Your Highness. Peony, Xilan, follow me. Peony and Xilan remained kneeling on the floor, motionless for a long time. Li Luo, take them out. I'm going to rest. Xuanhuan's tone was impatient. The 2 of them finally got up and looked at Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was already lying down with her back to them, and the 2 of them kowtowed to her. Miss, I'm afraid we won't have the chance to meet again after today. Please accept our bow. To be able to serve you in this life is our greatest blessing. It's just that Xilan and I didn't know how to appreciate it. I hope that in our next lives, we can still be your maids, said Peony. If I can't be a maid, I'm willing to be a cow or a horse, Xilan said. All right, Her Highness wants to rest. Follow me, said Li Luo. The 2 of them finally stood up and followed Li Luo out of the room, turning back every few steps. Xuanhuan lay on her side, her eyes closed. After a long while, she heard footsteps approaching. Have they all been sent away? Before Li Luo could reply, Xuanhuan felt someone sit down by her side. She opened her eyes and turned around to see Liemo. "You're back." Xuanhuan smiled. The sadness in her eyes had lessened considerably because of the man in front of her. "I heard from Li Luo that you've punished those two maids." Liemo caressed Xuanhuan's cheeks. "Yes, I chased them out." Xuanhuan lowered her eyes. "They've been with me for so long and they even tried to harm me. I can't keep such ungrateful people by my side." You're right," Liemo replied. "Someone who dares to harm my woman and child is useless in this world." Xuanhuan was startled by Liemo's tone. "Don't tell me that Peony and Xilan." Liemo looked at Xuanhuan. Didn't you say that they were useless?" "No," Xuanhuan hurriedly replied. "I'm saying that I can't keep them by my side, not that I want their lives. After all, they protected me when I was weak. Although I made a mistake this time, I didn't cause any irreversible damage, so it's still understandable. You mustn't hurt them." "Then what do you mean, Yin?" "Let them go. My relationship with them ends here," Xuanhuan said. Liemo's lips curved into a smile. "As far as I know, Yin, not only did you arrange for people to protect the four of them, but you've also made plans for their future. Even if they leave the capital, they'll be able to live a carefree life." "Indeed, I can't hide anything from you, slaughtering king." Xuanhuan sighed. "At first, I was angry that two people I trusted had tried to harm me, but when I thought about it, I realized that the two girls must have been living a life worse than death for the past 3 years, and that all of this was because of me. If not for the fact that they had a child, they would never have done anything to harm me. As a result, I forgave them the moment I saw that Li Yan was safe." "Then why did you chase them away?" "Because they had a child and they had something to worry about. Our enemies have always been strong, and we don't know when the people by our side will be in danger. Peony and Xilan are no longer suitable to stay by my side." Xuanhuan sighed. "In that case, I can only give them a future where they don't have to worry about food and clothing, and I won't disappoint them." "All right, as you wish." Liemo looked at Xuanhuan dotingly. In Liemo's mind, since Peony and Xilan were Xuanhuan's servants, their lives should belong to Xuanhuan. No matter what the reason was, once they betrayed their master, they would have to pay with their lives. This was a rule deeply ingrained in the hearts of the guards. However, for Xuanhuan's sake, Liemo was willing to compromise. Xuanhuan lay in Liemo's embrace. As soon as she closed her eyes, she suddenly remembered something important. She opened her eyes and sat up. "Liemo, I have something very important to tell you." "What is it?" Liemo asked when he saw Xuanhuan's reaction. "You've heard about what happened to Su Dong and Su Shi, right?" Xuanhuan didn't get straight to the point. "Yes, I do. I saw Su Shi's fatal wound, and it was a spiritual attack that only a sword saint could have unleashed." "It was Yunlan," Xuanhuan replied. "After you left, I returned to the Yun Manor and found that something was amiss, so I sent Su Dong and Su Shi to investigate." Xuanhuan told Liemo everything that had happened. Are you saying that your mother is currently in the Yun Manor's fragrant blossom garden?" Liemo looked at Xuanhuan's shocked expression. "I was also shocked when Su Shi revealed this information, but this is information that Su Dong and Su Shi exchanged with their lives. Whether it's true or not, it's worth investigating," Xuanhuan replied. "I've been waiting for your return these past few days. We have to go to the fragrant blossom garden to take a look." "Leave this matter to me. I'll go to the Yun Manor tonight," Liemo replied. "I've been resting with you for more than 10 days, and my body's almost fully recovered." Liemo frowned, and Xuanhuan hurriedly added, "If you don't let me go, I won't be able to rest at ease at home. I want to see with my own eyes what kind of place this fragrant blossom garden is, and whether my mother is really hidden there." Your Highness, the Lin sisters are here to see you." Just as Liemo and Xuanhuan were talking, Li Luo came in to report. "Sister Li Luo, let them in," Xuanhuan hurriedly urged. These past few days the Lin sisters had visited quite often. At first they would visit once a day, but now they would visit every 2 to 3 days. Afraid that they would worry, Xuanhuan hadn't told them about Peony and Xilan's poisoning, so the two sisters simply thought that she had given birth prematurely. "Sister Ruoyan, you look much better today." Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen entered the room one after the other and greeted Liemo as soon as they saw him. Liemo instructed them to spend more time with Xuanhuan before leaving the room. "How's grandfather doing?" Xuanhuan asked the Lin sisters. She had only visited the Lin Manor once since her return, and she hadn't had a chance to visit again. "He was just shocked when he heard that you'd given birth prematurely." He was so happy to hear that you and your mother were safe and sound that he'd been wanting to visit him for a long time, but he was afraid that it wouldn't be convenient. Lin Qingchen smiled. As soon as I feel better, I'll bring Yin to see him. Sister Ruoyan, there's something you might not know, Lin Qingxue suddenly said. What is it? The third miss of the Yun family, Yun Ruoyu. She's been chosen to go to the Mo kingdom for a marriage alliance. A marriage alliance? Is this news reliable? Yun Ruoyan was a little surprised. The Mo kingdom is the weakest kingdom on the Xuanhuan continent, while the Li kingdom is the dominant kingdom on the Xuanhuan continent. There's no reason for the Li kingdom to initiate a marriage alliance, is there? Sister, you might not know this, but a duke from the Mo kingdom came to pay his respects and presented Emperor Li with a very precious fish core. Emperor Li was so pleased that he promised to fulfill one of his wishes. He said that because he was too ugly, he hadn't been able to find a beautiful wife, and that he wanted to find a beautiful one in the Li kingdom. Emperor Li had a few portraits of the daughters of important officials prepared for him, and he chose Yun Ruoyu immediately. Lin Qingxue smiled. Although the Lin sisters hadn't interacted much with Yun Ruoyu, they knew that she was a troublesome young miss, and they clapped their hands in glee when they heard that she had been chosen. When Sister Ruoyu and I heard the news, we were surprised as well, but when we remembered that Yun Ruoyu had been chosen, we felt inexplicably happy. The Mo kingdom is by the sea and life is hard there. They eat fish for 3 meals a day and they rarely eat wheat or rice. I wonder if the third miss of the Yun family will be able to survive there. Lin Qingxue's smile was sinister. Yun Ruoyan also had a faint smile on her face. She had already guessed that Li Mo was most likely the culprit behind all this. Li Mo had once said that anything that harmed her and her child was unnecessary, but to kill someone like Yun Ruoyu was not enough to appease the hatred in his heart. Yun Ruoyu had been greedy for power and vanity since she was a child. To marry her off to a faraway land, far away from all the prosperity that she had longed for, to spend the rest of her life with an ugly, vulgar man, was truly a cruel punishment. Chapter 450. The Lin sisters carried Li Yan up, teasing him as they joked. Suddenly, Li Yan started giggling, startling both of them. Li Yan can actually laugh. He's only a few days old, isn't he? Lin Qingchen exclaimed. Yun Ruoyan laughed as well. This is the first time he's laughed. Seems like we're fated. We're really fated. He laughed as soon as I hugged him. Call him aunt, call him aunt. Lin Qingxue burst out laughing. Sister, you're silly. It's already surprising enough that such a young child can laugh. How can you call him aunt? Look, he really looks like Sister Ruoyan when he smiles, but why doesn't he look like brother-in-law? Hey, don't spout nonsense. Lin Qingchen hurriedly interrupted Lin Qingxue. Lin Qingxue also realized that she'd said something wrong and quickly shut her mouth. She turned to the door, and only when no one entered did Lin Qingxue heave a sigh of relief. The Lin sisters had never seen Li Mo's true appearance, so they naturally felt that Li Yan didn't look like him. In fact, Li Yan most likely looked like Li Mo, especially the shape of his face. Only his black hair and large eyes were very similar to Yun Ruoyan's. As they chatted and laughed, half a day passed unknowingly, and the neighboring sisters bid their farewells at dusk. At night, Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo snuck into the Yun manor. Half a month ago, Yun Ruoyu had been escorted off to the Mo kingdom to be married off. Without anyone to take charge of the household, the Yun household had become a mess in just a few days. The flowers and plants were all scattered and untended, and even the patrolling guards had disappeared. When Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo entered the Yun manor, it was as though they'd entered a deserted manor. How did it end up like this in just a few days? Yun Ruoyan asked curiously as the two of them walked through the courtyard. When Yun Ruoyu was the housekeeper, she chased away all the elders who couldn't stand the sight of her and replaced them with newbies. Everything related to money was managed by her alone, and the moment she left, the manor immediately fell into chaos. The newbies weren't loyal to the Yun manor, and once the manor was in chaos, they immediately sought a way out for themselves, Li Mo explained. I see. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected that the Yun manor would be in such a state of disunity after just 3 years of absence. When Yun Maxiao returned, he would surely have a headache for a while. You were behind Yun Ruoyu's incident, weren't you? Yes. I wanted to end her right away, but that wouldn't be enough to quench my hatred, so I crippled her cultivation and found a duke from the Mo kingdom whom I'd once interacted with. To be able to marry a duke, that's not too bad. No wonder Yun Ruoyu married him without a fuss, Yun Ruoyan commented. Li Mo smiled. Yin, you might not know this, but the Duke isn't looking for a wife for himself, but for his stableman. Yun Ruoyan turned to Liemo in surprise. Given Yun Ruoyu's personality, how could she be willing? Of course she didn't want to, so I lent her some bewitching powder. By the time she woke up, the matter was already settled and she was already in the Mo kingdom. As a weak girl without a cultivation, she would have no choice but to resign herself to her fate, Liemo replied. Yun Ruoyan had died once, so she didn't think death was all that frightening. What was truly frightening was living a life worse than death. As a result, she was very satisfied with Liemo's decision. Yun Ruoyan didn't know what the fragrant blossom garden was, and she had never heard of it in her decade of living in the manor. As such, she had no choice but to bring Liemo to a secluded location. On a small path not far from her cottage, Liemo suddenly stopped. Yun Ruoyan turned around. What's the matter? Did you discover something? There's a rather powerful formation nearby, Liemo replied. Yun Ruoyan followed Liemo into a thicket by the side of the path. After about 200 steps, the two of them arrived at a place surrounded by fake mountains. This is a maze formation, Liemo explained. Yun Ruoyan had some impression of such a formation. A long time ago, when she and Liemo had gone to the Yuelu villa to rescue the beastkin, they had encountered such a formation. Liemo walked along the fake mountains according to a set pattern, and Yun Ruoyan followed closely behind him. In less than 5 minutes, Liemo had broken through the formation. Liemo held Yun Ruoyan's hand as they stepped out of the formation, and the scene before them changed dramatically. Under the moonlight, there was a 2-story building built on the water. It was connected to the ground by a stone bridge made of white jade. On both sides of the bridge, there were railings inlaid with moonlight stones. The moonlight stones shone dimly on the bridge and the water, making the scene in front of them look like a dream. So this is the fragrant blossom garden, Liemo murmured. Liemo murmured, his gaze landing on a plaque on the roof of the house. Yun Ruoyan had also seen the plaque, Fragrant Blossom Garden. Subconsciously, Yun Ruoyan was about to step onto the stone bridge when Liemo stopped her and brought her across the water to the side of the building. Both Su Dong and Su Shi's concealment techniques were top-notch, but they had still been discovered by Yun Lan. If they weren't careful enough, they might not be able to see what they wanted to see. The two of them hid by the window. The window was closed and there was no sound from within. However, Yun Lan seemed to be in the middle of circulating his spiritual energy, so the aura within was very obvious. Yun Ruoyan took out her dagger and stabbed it into the crack of the window, using the most primitive method to open it. She carefully pushed the window open bit by bit. White cold air seeped out from the gap of the window and wrapped around her hand that was pushing the window open. Just then, a voice rang out from within the house. "You're finally here." It was Yun Lan's voice. Yun Ruoyan's hand paused, and Liemo immediately pushed the window open and jumped into the house, shielding Yun Ruoyan behind him. "Slaughtering King, you're here too." Yun Lan's voice rang out once more. Yun Ruoyan followed Yun Lan into the house. The walls were inlaid with luminous pearls, and through the hazy, frosty air, Yun Ruoyan could finally see the interior of the house. About 30 to 40 feet away from them, there was a bed that was as green as jade, and there was a steady stream of cold air coming out from the bed. 2 people sat cross-legged on the bed. The woman was dressed in red, and her entire body was shrouded in a thick layer of frosty air, making it difficult to see her face. Behind her was a man who seemed to be circulating his spiritual energy into the woman's body through his palms. The man's hair was white, and upon closer inspection, Yun Ruoyan realized that it was none other than Yun Lan. Could the woman in red be her mother, Lin Yueme? "Father, what's going on?" Yun Ruoyan blurted out. "You guessed right. This is your mother, Lin Yueme," Yun Lan replied, his hands still infusing spiritual energy into Lin Yueme's body. "Tell me what's going on here?" Yun Ruoyan clenched her fists, no longer able to suppress the confusion in her heart. Why was it that her mother had been living in the same courtyard as her all those years ago, but she hadn't known at all? Why was it that, despite being a motherless child for so many years, her mother was only a few hundred feet away from her own residence? What made Yun Ruoyan even more pitiful was that, in her past life, she had missed the chance to meet her mother. Even when she had died, she hadn't known that her mother was still alive. Her confusion, depression, and grief welled up in her heart. She couldn't help raising her voice. "Tell me what's going on here?" "Yen'er, he's channeling his spiritual energy. If you interrupt him now, his life might be in danger." Liemo pulled Yun Ruoyan back, preventing her from advancing any further. "If he dies, you won't be able to get the answer you want." Yun Ruoyan forcefully controlled herself, so much so that her entire body began to tremble. Liemo held her in his arms, trying to calm her down. Ruoyan, give me a moment. I'll give you an explanation, Yunlan began. More than 2 hours later, at around midnight, Yunlan finally stopped channeling his spiritual energy. When he removed his hands from Lin Yueme's body, the dense, chilly air surrounding her immediately dissipated. Although there was still some lingering air from the ice bed, Yun Ruoyan could vaguely make out Lin Yueme's face. It was a face that bore a striking resemblance to her own, one that had appeared in her dreams countless times since she was a child. She had once danced beneath a peach blossom tree in a red dress, and she had once held her in her arms to comfort her. But those were all dreams, and when she awoke there was nothing. But now Lin Yueme was right in front of her, no more than 30 feet away. Liemo, tell me this isn't a dream. I'm not dreaming. Yun Ruoyan clutched Liemo's hands tightly. Yin, this isn't a dream. What you're seeing is real. Mother. Yun Ruoyan finally called out. Her voice was extremely soft, as if she were afraid that she would leave if she woke up. Yun Lan placed Lin Yueme gently on the ice bed, then had Yun Ruoyan and Liemo follow him. Liemo's cultivation was now far superior to Yun Lan's, so he wasn't afraid of any tricks. He pulled Yun Ruoyan along as they followed Yun Lan. Yun Ruoyan's gaze lingered on Lin Yueme's body until Liemo pulled her into the room next door. The cold in the room next door was much weaker, but it was still chilly. Yun Lan's face was pale. He didn't know if it was because he had used too much energy or because he had stayed in this cold environment for too long. Slaughtering King, please take a seat. Yun Lan bowed politely to Liemo. There's no hot tea here. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Official Yun, I'm not here as a guest. I'm here to find Yen'er's mother. Don't you think you should give me an explanation? Yun Ruoyan stared fixedly at Yun Lan, all her emotions and resentment clear in her eyes. Actually, when I discovered those two guards, I guessed that they were from the Slaughtering King's manor. Apart from the Slaughtering King's manor, there's no other guard in the entire Li Kingdom with such a high cultivation and stubbornness. From then on, I knew that you'd come looking for me. Yun Lan avoided Yun Ruoyan's gaze. If you knew, why didn't you hide? Were you waiting for us? Yun Ruoyan asked coldly. That's right. Yun Lan suddenly smiled. I thought that I'd keep this secret for the rest of my life. But now that things have come to this, I have no choice but to reveal it. Yun Ruoyan listened quietly to Yun Lan's story, her thoughts drifting back to more than a decade ago. As it turned out, Yun Lan had known about Qin Jinmei's jealousy toward Lin Yueme from the start. He had wanted to stop the two of them from dating, but Lin Yueme's attitude toward him had fluctuated wildly. As a result, he had wanted to use Qin Jinmei to test Lin Yueme. What Yun Lan hadn't expected, however, was that the seemingly harmless Qin Jinmei was actually harboring malicious intentions. She had poisoned Lin Yueme with an extremely rare and insidious broodmother parasite. Just as Lin Yueme was about to succumb to the poison, Yun Lan obtained an ice bed from the extreme north. This ice bed could completely seal a person's blood vessels in ice, causing them to freeze in place for an eternity. As a result, Yun Lan fed Lin Yueme a death-feigning elixir, then deceived both the Yun and Lin families, bringing Lin Yueme out of her tomb and hiding her in the Fang residence. Chapter 451. At first, Yun Lan didn't know that Qin Jinmei was the culprit behind Lin Yueme's affliction until Yun Ruoyan discovered the truth. After learning the truth, Yun Lan regretted his actions. It was he who had caused Lin Yueme to lie in a coma for more than a decade. For the past decade, I've been searching everywhere for a cure for the poison in Yueme's body, but the poison has already seeped deep into her bones. Recently, I found a way to save you, Mei, Yun Lan said. What way? Yun Ruoyan asked hurriedly. The yin-yang life-changing technique, Yun Lan replied. Give my lifespan to Yueme. Yun Ruoyan was a little taken aback. Not to mention she had never heard of the yin-yang life-changing technique before, but she had never heard of it before. Yun Lan's affection for her mother was far beyond Yun Ruoyan's expectations, and her resentment toward him lessened by a great deal. I've unintentionally discovered that Ruoyu has two demonic beasts in her possession, and they're truly necessary tools for the yin-yang life-changing technique. Yun Lan took out the Bodhisattva and the Buddha. Yun Ruoyan was surprised that the two beasts hadn't been burned to ashes, and that Yun Lan was using them to save her mother. The yin-yang life-changing technique requires 81 days and half of that time has passed. I can already clearly sense the vitality in Yueme's body. Yun Lan's face lit up. The next part of the technique will be extremely important, and I can't afford to be disturbed. I'll have to leave the affairs of the manor to you. Although Yunlan had been in the brothel all this time, he had his own ways of knowing what was happening outside, including Yun Ruoyu's situation. However, Yun Ruoyu had tried to harm Yun Ruoyan, and Yunlan didn't think that Liemo would spare her life. Marrying her off to a distant family was the best outcome he could hope for, so he had no intention of pleading on her behalf. Don't worry, the Yun family will be handed over to my brother in the future. I don't want to see this happen either, Yun Ruoyan replied. Tomorrow I'll take over the Yun family and reorganize it. If I may be so bold as to make a request, Yunlan began. Yunlan continued, I've been ill for many days and the people in court are bound to be suspicious of me. There are many spies inside and outside the Yun residence, and I hope that the Slaughtering King can help me out. Liemo glanced at Yun Ruoyan. Tomorrow, I'll have a secret guard stationed around the fragrant residence to ensure that no one disturbs you. Very well. Yunlan smiled. The next day Yun Ruoyan brought Yen Emo into the Yun manor, as well as her servants from the Slaughtering King's manor, as well as Li Luo, because she was used to the Yun residence as well as because it was close to the Yun. Your Highness, the housekeeper here is too outrageous, Xianxia complained as soon as she entered the room. Madam Yun Ruoyu, Li Chen, Lan, Yun Lan Yun and Lan and Yun and Yun and Chen Qing Lan Lan Yun said Ling Yun Li Yun Lan and Lan Yun Yun 1 Yun. Recently Li Yan had been very noisy and wouldn't sleep at all, so sleep during the day was very important to his growth. She hurriedly covered her mouth and was about to leave when Yun Ruoyan spoke. What's the matter? She replied in a small voice, I've asked the steward to send a few servants to help clean up the house, but I'm afraid he'll be too busy. Guess what he said? He said that you've come uninvited, and that they don't have the time to wait on you. He told us to do as we please, and that it'd be best if we could be self-sufficient. Although Xianxi's voice was small, she was able to imitate the butler's mannerisms perfectly. Yun Ruoyan should have been angry, but she was amused instead. Madam, why are you so amused? I'm going to die of anger. After all, we're servants of the Slaughtering King's manor. The more Xianxi thought about it, the angrier she became. Although the Slaughtering King's manor was very strict, apart from a few rules that had to be obeyed, the rest were quite lax. In particular, the relationship between the servants had always been very harmonious. This was the first time she'd encountered such a situation, and she didn't know how to retaliate. Go get that butler, I'll help you vent your anger. Yun Ruoyan smiled. I can't get him to come. I told him to look for Madam if he's dissatisfied, but he said. Xianxi imitated the servant's tone. I'm the head butler of the Yun manor, and I'm not subject to the Slaughtering King's orders. Other than Third Miss, I don't listen to anyone else in this manor. But Third Miss is no longer in the manor, so no one can control me now. Indeed, you should be disciplined. Yun Ruoyan stopped laughing. She really didn't know where Yun Ruoyu had gotten all these useless things from, but she'd actually stuffed them all into the Yun household. Now Yun Ruoyan strongly suspected that Yun Ruoyu was deliberately trying to destroy the Yun family. I'll go. Once Li Luo was sure that Li Luo was fast asleep, she stood up. I'd like to see what kind of ruthless character this butler is. In less than half a stick of incense's time, Xianxi ran in a panic. Princess, it's bad. Sister Li Luo is fighting with that housekeeper. What a ruthless character. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but frown as she took a look at little Li Yan, who was in the cradle. The little fellow was sleeping very soundly as his brows were relaxed and his little mouth would occasionally move. Probably he was drinking milk in his dreams. Xianxi, stay here and look after the young master. I'll go take a look. Yun Ruoyan walked out of the room. A mere butler like you actually has such a high cultivation? Who exactly are you? Li Luo had already exchanged more than a dozen blows with the slightly plump butler, and they'd all ended in a draw. I didn't expect a servant from the Slaughtering King's manor to be so powerful. It looks like the Slaughtering King's manor is indeed a formidable place. Li Luo's cultivation had broken through to the peak of 8th rank 2 years ago, but because she was stuck at a bottleneck, she hadn't been able to advance any further. However, on the Xuanhuan continent, she rarely met a worthy opponent. Who would have thought that a mere butler would be able to fight her to a draw? Could he be a hidden expert? Li Luo didn't dare to let her guard down. But in that split second of distraction, she was surrounded by a dozen spiritual fireballs. These fireballs were extremely hot, and the slightest contact with her body immediately set her clothes on fire. Ha ha! The plump butler laughed. Everyone else likes to watch beauties bathe, but I like to watch beauties bathe in fire. When Yun Ruoyan arrived, she saw Li Luo pathetically trying to extinguish the flames on her body, and the flames in Yun Ruoyan's heart were immediately ignited. On the Xuanhuan continent, someone in the Yun manor dared to bully one of her own, and this person was going to be her future sister-in-law, the true mistress of the Yun manor. Without another word, Yun Ruoyan released a large fireball in Li Luo's direction. As soon as the fireball came into contact with the circle of flames, it was as if it were a magnet, instantly drawing the flames to itself. The large fireball became a large fireball in its own right. Yun Ruoyan waved her hand, and the large fireball flew back into her palm, turning into a marble-sized fireball that spun in the air. Ruoyan. Li Luo extinguished the flames on her body and walked to Yun Ruoyan's side. There's something strange about this butler. Yun Ruoyan nodded, then turned to the fat butler. Who are you exactly? Why did you hide in the Yun manor, and why did you purposely reveal your identity? Who's the mastermind behind all this? Yun Ruoyan held on to the spinning fireball, her expression calm and composed, but the anger in her eyes was clear. She asked 3 questions in a row, but the fat butler didn't answer a single one. He was still shocked by Yun Ruoyan's profound cultivation. This was the first time he'd seen someone who could control a fireball so perfectly. A thin layer of sweat had formed on the butler's forehead. I'd thought that the manor lord had given me a good job, but I didn't expect to be sent here as cannon fodder. The slaughtering king's consort's cultivation is truly unfathomable. I'm afraid I'm going to die this time. Her Highness is asking you a question. If you're not mute, hurry up and answer. Li Luo shouted. Her Highness, my name is Gu Dezhuang and I'm just an ordinary butler. It was Miss Ruoyu who invited me here, and there's no mastermind behind all this. If you don't believe me, you can have Miss Ruoyu confront me. The fat butler replied. Nonsense, Yun Ruoyan replied coldly. With a single glance, she could tell that this self-proclaimed Gu Dezhuang wasn't a pushover. She would have to use extreme methods to deal with him, or else she wouldn't be able to get what she wanted out of his mouth. She didn't want to waste any more words with him. She flicked the fireball at Gu Dezhuang. The fireball turned into a blur and appeared in front of Gu Dezhuang in an instant, then split into a ring of smaller fireballs that trapped him within. Yun Ruoyan's technique was much more powerful than before, giving him a taste of his own medicine. The flames of these fireballs wouldn't burn a person's clothes, but they were as hot as the sun, capable of roasting a person alive. Her Highness, spare me, spare me. I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, you can ask Miss Ruoyu. Gu Dezhuang had only been surrounded by the fireballs for a few blinks of an eye, but his clothes were already drenched in sweat. His originally plump and fair body had actually shrunk in the blink of an eye. Yun Ruoyan didn't doubt that in less than 2 hours, this plump man would become a dried-up corpse. I don't listen to lies or nonsense. You only have 2 hours. After that, you won't be able to speak even if you want to, Yun Ruoyan threatened. Xiao Lian was still sleeping in her cottage, and Yun Ruoyan wanted to end this quickly so she could go back and take care of the baby. I can't say. Gu Dezhuang was sweating profusely as if he were soaking in water. His round face was visibly shriveling up. He took a deep breath and said, My entire family is in the hands of the manor lord. If I betray the manor lord, my entire family will die. Chapter 452. Now that Gu Dezhuang was a spy, Yun Ruoyan naturally wouldn't go easy on him. He wouldn't be able to escape his fate. She was surrounded by a group of servants from the Yun manor, some of whom were elders that Yun Ruoyu had left behind, while others were newcomers of unknown origin. As they watched the plump, white man being roasted by the fireballs, their faces paled, and they didn't even dare to breathe. Yun Ruoyan raised her eyes and swept her gaze across the crowd. Those who looked at her immediately lowered their heads. Yun Ruoyan had spoken. I'm the eldest daughter of the Yun family, and all the elders here should recognize me. Although I've married into the slaughtering king's manor, I'm not completely unrelated to the Yun family. Right now, my father is hiding from the public, Ruoyu is married to an outsider, the first young master is fighting a rebellion, and my grandmother is bedridden. I'm duty-bound to take on the responsibility of managing the Yun family, and I don't care what you're thinking or planning. If you don't want to stay, you can pay your wages and leave immediately. If you want to stay, do your job well. If I find out that any of you are disloyal, you'll end up like him. Yun Ruoyan pointed at Gu Dezhuang, her tone cold and hard. By now Gu Dezhuang had become a corpse. With a wave of Yun Ruoyan's hand, the dimmed fireballs flew toward Gu Dezhuang on the ground, instantly incinerating him to ashes. What do you think, lass? The fireball technique I taught you is an upgraded version of the fireball technique. Impressive, right? On the way back to her rooms, the demonic dragon patriarch's voice rang out in Yunruoyan's mind. Once you inherit the position of the demonic dragon family head, I'll teach you even more powerful techniques. You can also continue practicing the demonic dragon technique when you're free. I'll protect you with my real body, and I'm sure you'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. By then your cultivation might even surpass Limo's. Yunruoyan didn't respond to the patriarch's words. As soon as Yunruoyan entered her rooms, she sensed that something was amiss. The two servants she had brought from the slaughtering king's manor were still busy cleaning, but there was an unfamiliar aura in the room. She quickly walked into the room and saw Xianxia sprawled on the floor beside her cradle. The cradle was swaying back and forth, but it was empty. Yunruoyan felt her head explode. Not good. He had fallen into the trap of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Little master, where's little master? Liluo's face paled. Just as she was about to check on Xianxia, Yunruoyan flashed past her and flew out of the back window. The man's aura hadn't dissipated and he hadn't been gone for long. Yunruoyan chased after him as fast as she could. Yunruoyan raised her flying sword and saw a black dot on the horizon. She pushed Qitong's speed to the limit and chased after it without a care in the world. A short while later she caught up to the man. He was wearing a hood that covered his face, and when she turned around she saw that he was carrying an infant in his arms. Return the child to me and I'll spare your life. Yunruoyan stared at the infant in his arms. If you want children, I'll give them to you. The man threw the swaddle far away, and the shrill cries of a baby could be heard. Frightened out of her wits, Yunruoyan chased after the infant. The man took the opportunity to escape on his sword. Yunruoyan successfully caught the infant in her arms and hurriedly checked on the child's condition, only to discover that the infant wasn't Xiao Lian at all. She had been tricked again. Yunruoyan stared coldly at the back of the man who had escaped on his sword, and her killing intent surged. She reached out and grabbed at the man, and a scarlet fireball appeared in her palm. Yunruoyan swung her hand, and the fireball shot toward the man, whistling through the air. The fireball entered his body, and with a bang, the man turned into a bloody mist before he could even react. Since Xuanhuan had chosen to die, there was no point in keeping him alive. When Yunruoyan returned to her rooms with the infant in her arms, Xianxia was still breathing, waiting for Yunruoyan. She had grown up in the slaughtering king's manor and had some cultivation. However, the enemy had come in from the back window, appeared suddenly and dealt a heavy blow. Xianxia didn't even have time to resist before she was ambushed from behind. The back of her head was almost smashed in by a hard object. Yunruoyan quickly fed her a life-saving spiritual pill and infused spiritual energy into her to treat her injuries. Xianxia finally opened her eyes, but it was only a momentary recovery. Your Highness, there were two people who came, and they left after reporting to the young master. Xianxia grabbed Yunruoyan's sleeves. I heard them say that they would split up, one to lure you away, and the other to bring the young master back to report to the manor lord. Xianxia closed her eyes forever. The enemy was both cruel and cunning. She had killed Xuanhuan, and they had immediately killed her servant. First, they had used Xuanhuan as bait to lure the tiger away from the mountain, and then they had used a fake child to confuse the public and successfully abducted her child. Liemo arrived at night, and when Yunruoyan saw Liemo, she couldn't hold on any longer. Large droplets of tears flowed down her cheeks, but she couldn't make a sound. Liemo was worried about Li Yan, but he also felt sorry for Yunruoyan. In his heart, he had already sentenced the person who had abducted his child and injured his woman to death. Liemo, it's all my fault. I didn't look after Li Yan, it's all my fault, Yunruoyan said in a daze. Your Highness, you fell for the trap because you wanted to save me. If you want to blame someone, you should blame me. Li Luo's eyes were red, and it seemed that she had cried a lot. Li Yan will be fine, Liemo comforted. Liemo comforted her. No matter who kidnapped him, they must want something from us and they wouldn't dare to hurt him. This wasn't hard to think of, but Yunruoyan had been too worried to think of it. Then what should we do? Are we just going to wait for them to state their conditions? Yunruoyan asked anxiously. I've already sent people to investigate in secret, and I've thought of someone. Yunruoyan suddenly thought of something. I've heard that person is the manor lord. Limeau's eyes were as cold as ice. It's most likely the person I'm thinking of. Not long after, on the night of the second day, a servant left a flying sword at the front door of the Yun family. A letter was tied to the tip of the sword. Liemo was invited to the Yuelu villa that night, and the child was in Limeau's hands, warning him not to act rashly. Within the Yuelu villa, the manor lord, Dong Tiehe, and the fourth prince, Li Qianyue, were anxiously awaiting the arrival of a certain person. More accurately, they were awaiting the arrival of the emperor. The two of them had mixed feelings because they had never imagined that they would be kneeling and kowtowing to someone they had once looked down on. In their eyes, even if all the princes were dead, the throne might not necessarily fall to a prince born by a servant girl. However, the development of events was often unexpected. The prince born by the servant girl actually succeeded in ascending to the throne with shocking methods, climbing to a position that they had to look up to. Fourth brother, the manor lord, please rise. Li Qianyuan alighted from the carriage and hurriedly helped Dong Tiehe and Li Qianhuan to their feet. His actions successfully dispelled the anxiety in their hearts. Brother, we've done everything you've asked of us, Li Qianyue replied. Led by Dong Tiehe and Li Qianyue, Li Qianyuan entered a room. There were maids and a wet nurse in the room and of course a cradle. Little Lian was currently in the cradle, looking around with wide eyes. The child had been abducted from his mother's side and brought to a strange place, but he didn't cry or make a fuss, as if he were curious about his surroundings. Li Qianyuan could see the shadow of his mother through the child's bright eyes. Li Qianyuan could clearly remember the scene of Yun Ruoyan walking into the garden in his mother's palace gown. He felt as if all the flowers in the garden had become more beautiful and fragrant because of her presence. Your Majesty, this is the slaughtering king's child, Dong Tiehe began. We've already sent him an invitation as per your Majesty's wishes. Li Qianyuan's gaze moved away from the cradle. Today I'll be meeting my uncle here. At dusk, Liemo brought Su Bei and Su Nan to the Yuelu villa. Given Limeau's cultivation, no matter how dangerous the task, he would always act alone. Su Nan and Su Bei were no longer of much use, and he had only brought them along to reassure Dong Tiehe. The Yuelu villa was as lively as ever. As soon as Limeau's trio entered, Dong Tiehe came to welcome them. Where's my son? Liemo asked as soon as he entered the courtyard. What do I have to do to return him to me? The slaughtering king, Dong Tiehe began. Dong Tiehe said, you really think too highly of me. I'm just the manor lord of a small mountain village. How would I dare to have ideas about you? There's someone else who wants to negotiate with you. Liemo frowned and followed Dong Tiehe into one of the rooms, where there was indeed someone waiting for him. Uncle, long time no see. Li Qianyuan stood up and looked at Liemo with a warm smile. Liemo paused for a moment, then strode over. You're the one who abducted my son. Liemo looked at Li Qianyuan coldly. What do you want from me? Uncle, please sit. Li Qianyuan leisurely poured a cup of wine for Liemo. I've invited you to the palace many times, but you've always refused with all sorts of excuses. That's why I had no choice but to come up with this plan to see you. Chapter 453. Li Qianyuan didn't know of Limeau's true parentage, but Liemo was the only elder in the Li kingdom who could threaten him. Coupled with Limeau's reputation, Li Qianyuan had always been worried that Limeau's return would pose a threat to the throne he'd worked so hard to obtain. Li Qianyuan had even prepared a series of life and death struggles, but Liemo hadn't made a single move to restore order since his return. Gradually, Li Qianyuan began to relax, and he began to think of ways to win Liemo over to his side. Ever since Liemo and Yun Ruoyan had returned to the capital, Li Qianyuan had tried to summon Liemo more than once on behalf of the emperor, but Liemo had always refused. During this period of time, Li Qianyuan had received news that Liemo had been leaving the capital frequently, but he hadn't been able to trace his whereabouts. Li Qianyuan couldn't keep his cool any longer. Although Li Qianyuan had ascended to the throne, he often felt uneasy because his position wasn't legitimate. As a result, he grew increasingly suspicious of Liemo. As a result, Liemo had become a thorn in his heart. Just then Dong Tiehe, who had joined Li Qianyuan's side, suggested a solution. Your Majesty, if you want to beat a snake, hit it where it hurts. The slaughtering king is the snake that's threatening you right now. As long as you find his weak point and grab it tightly, you'll have the slaughtering king in your hands. Dong Tiehe's intention was to kidnap Yun Ruoyan and Xiao Liyan together and then threaten Liemo to be of use to him, but Yun Ruoyan's cultivation was very high and it was not easy to kidnap her, so he could only scheme to kidnap Xiao Liyan. Li Qianyuan didn't think that he could control Liemo with the help of a mere child. If it turned out to be the opposite of what he wanted, he was afraid that he would die without a burial ground. After much consideration, he thought of a compromise method. You wanted to see me? I'm here now, Li Mo replied patiently. If you have anything to say, you can say it now. Li Qinyuan's smile didn't waver. I'd like to ask for an oath from you, your majesty. An oath? What oath? As long as you swear never to threaten me again, I'll immediately return your son to you, Li Qinyuan said. You want me to swear an oath? Li Mo sneered. Yes, swear to the gods and demons of the 9 heavens in the name of your wife and son. Li Qinyuan didn't seem to notice Li Mo's expression as it grew colder and colder. As long as you. Without waiting for Li Qinyuan to finish, Li Mo abruptly rose to his feet, reached out and grabbed him by the neck. Li Qinyuan, you're the first person on the Qinyuan continent to dare threaten me like this, Li Mo said. Slaughtering King, please release his majesty. Let's talk this out. Dong Tieha hurriedly stepped forward, and a dozen or so imperial guards drew their swords and surrounded Li Mo's trio. Su Nan and Su Bei stood on Li Mo's left and right, their weapons drawn, and the two sides faced off against each other. All of you stand down, Li Qinyuan commanded. He was well aware of Li Mo's abilities, and these warriors couldn't even deal with his 2 secret guards, much less Li Mo himself. All he knew was that Li Mo cared about Yin Ruoyan and Li Yan. Uncle, as long as you swear an oath, I'll return the child to you immediately, Li Qinyuan said. But if you kill me, you'll never see the child again. Li Mo's grip tightened, and Li Qinyuan's face grew paler and paler. Just as he was about to lose his breath, Li Mo suddenly released him. Li Qinyuan breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that Li Mo had finally relented. However, Li Mo only smiled mysteriously. Originally, I didn't want to care about how you fought for power, but you just had to seek your own death. Do you really think that you can threaten this king? Li Qinyuan's face turned cold. What do you mean? The child is in my hands, so don't you dare try anything funny. Before Li Mo could respond, a woman's voice rang out. Li Qinyuan, you're really courting death. Li Qinyuan looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a woman dressed in a light green chiffon dress. Her hair was as black as the clouds, and even though she didn't wear any makeup, she was still as beautiful as ever. However, the woman's expression was unsightly, and her gaze toward Li Qinyuan was filled with intense anger. This woman was none other than Yin Ruoyan, and in her arms was an infant, Li Yan. Manor Lord, Manor Lord. A warrior stumbled in and shouted to Dong Tieha, Manor Lord, it's not good. Someone broke in and took the young master away. As soon as the warrior finished speaking, he saw Yin Ruoyan, who was carrying the child. He was so frightened that he fell to the ground, pointed at her, and shouted incoherently, It's her, it's this demon. She stole the child and roasted several of our brothers into human jerky. What nonsense are you spouting? This is the slaughtering king's consort. Scram. Dong Tieha kicked the obviously frightened warrior before bowing to Yin Ruoyan. This servant was insensible and offended you, your highness. Please forgive me. Yin Ruoyan glanced at Dong Tieha from the corner of her eye and said coldly, Manor Lord, I'm afraid it's not that the servants aren't sensible. Rather, it's that you're bold enough to steal my child in broad daylight. I wouldn't dare, Dong Tieha hurriedly replied. I'm only working for the emperor. Come here. Li Mo stretched out his hand toward Yin Ruoyan, and only then did Yin Ruoyan's complexion improve. She smiled at Li Mo before walking over with Li Yan in her arms. Is the child all right? Li Mo asked as he looked at Li Yan, who was sleeping soundly in Yin Ruoyan's arms. He's fine, Yin Ruoyan replied. Yin Ruoyan replied, When I found him, he was still awake and full of energy as if he'd just fallen asleep. That's good. Only then did Li Mo relax. He had Yin Ruoyan stand by the side as he turned his gaze back to Li Qinyuan, his eyes cold. Uncle. Li Qinyuan's back went numb when he met his icy stare. Uncle, I was only joking with you, he said. You've gone a little too far. Li Mo's gaze was cold and his tone even colder. Originally, it had nothing to do with me who became emperor, but now, it seems that anyone can be emperor except you. Li Mo was both shocked and angered by Li Mo's words. No matter what, he was still the emperor and he had been on the throne for more than a year. No one else dared to speak to him like Li Mo did. Moreover, Li Mo's words were so provocative that Li Qianxiao couldn't accept them. Ever since he was young, he had known that Li Mo was a formidable character. Even his own father and the other 3 emperors respected him. But no matter how formidable he was still a subject of a kingdom, and a subject had to obey the emperor's orders. But now he was the emperor and Li Mo was the subject. Uncle, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to rebel? Rebel? Liemo laughed as if he had forgotten who was the one who had rebelled first. Rebellion isn't the right word for you. I'm merely cleaning up the mess. Liemo once again extended a hand toward Li Qinyuan. As if his hand possessed some sort of suction force, Li Qinyuan's neck was once more in Liemo's grasp. Guards! Guards! Li Qinyuan shouted at the guards. Your Highness, you mustn't kill the Emperor. Dong Tieha tried to stop him, but he didn't do anything. Li Qianyue, who was standing by his side, called out to his brother and was about to step forward when Dong Tieha stopped him. He subconsciously tried to turn around, but Dong Tieha signaled with his eyes. Don't go. Come back. My brother has been captured by the Slaughtering King. The Slaughtering King kills without batting an eyelid, and my brother is in danger. You'll only have a chance if he's dead. Otherwise you'll never have a chance at the throne. Li Qianyue froze. The throne? He was also an imperial prince and he had the right to ascend to the throne. Li Qianyuan had used extreme methods to become the emperor, and although Li Qianyue had some objections, he couldn't do anything about it. If Li Qianyuan were to die, then he would have a chance. Li Qianyue stopped dead in his tracks. Quick, protect the emperor. Li Qianyuan's neck was in Liemo's grasp, and he couldn't even put up a fight against Yunruoyan, let alone Liemo. Su Nan and Su Bei were more than enough to deal with a dozen imperial warriors, and Yunruoyan didn't even need to do anything. Li Qianyuan's vision darkened. He hadn't expected Liemo to actually kill him, but there was no medicine for regret in this world. Liemo finally released his grip, and Li Qianyuan's body slumped to the ground, no longer able to breathe. The dozen or so imperial warriors were all killed by Su Nan and Su Bei. Dong Tieha and Li Qianyue watched from the sidelines, as if none of this had anything to do with the two of them. When Liemo's cold gaze landed on the two of them, Dong Tieha immediately bowed. Qianyue and I will keep our mouths shut about what happened today. Otherwise we'll die a horrible death. Dong Tieha didn't even wait for Liemo to speak before swearing the oath. Li Qianyuan killed his father and usurped the throne, so there's no need to hide it, Liemo replied coolly. You'll be in charge of informing the palace of the consequences. Yes, Your Highness, Dong Tieha replied. Liemo prepared to leave with Yunruoyan in his arms. Dong Tieha and Li Qianyue followed closely behind to send them off. When they reached the gates, Liemo suddenly turned around and looked at them sharply. Manor Lord Dong, have you forgotten that beastmen aren't allowed to be traded in the Li Kingdom? Dong Tieha's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly replied, I remember. That day when I saw Your Highness's handwritten decree, I immediately released those beastmen. If I hadn't known that they were under Your Highness's protection, I wouldn't have dared to do business with them. Then this king will clearly tell you that every beastman on the Qingyuan continent is under this king's protection. Do you understand? Yes, Dong Tieha replied. Liemo had even dared to kill Emperor Li. Killing Dong Tieha would be no more difficult than killing an ant. Dong Tieha was still very sensible of the situation. Chapter 454. Not long after Liemo left, Dong Tieha returned to his room, where a silver-robed, silver-masked man was waiting for him. I'm sorry for my incompetence, First Elder, Dong Tieha apologized to the silver-robed man. You're indeed incompetent. The silver-robed man's back was to Dong Tieha, but when he heard his words he turned around and kicked Dong Tieha, forcing him back a few steps. Not only are you incompetent, but you're also audacious. The Silver Dragon Elder asked you to bring the Slaughtering King's child to me, but you told him about it without my permission. Not only have you caused trouble, but you've also messed things up. I'll report this to the First Elder. The silver-robed man turned to leave, but he heard Dong Tieha's voice after taking 2 steps. Silver Dragon Envoy, please wait. I've already found the information you asked me to find out. The Silver Dragon Ambassador stopped in his tracks and turned around. Beneath the silver mask, a pair of bright eyes looked at Dong Tieha. Imperial Uncle Rong is currently locked up in the palace's dungeon, along with the Crown Prince and his accomplices. Originally they were supposed to be executed after this, but there's no need for that now, Dong Tieha said. Li Qianyuan was just killed by the Slaughtering King. The silver-robed man's eyes flickered as he asked, What do you mean? With Li Qianyuan's death, it's only a matter of time before all the officials he imprisoned are released. Once the new emperor ascends to the throne, he'll definitely pardon them. Dong Tieha smiled. So you don't have to worry about Uncle Rong's safety anymore. In that case I'll have to thank you, Manor Master Dong. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Please put in a good word for me in front of the Silver Dragon Elder. Dong Tieha wasn't satisfied with being a mere manor master for the rest of his life. He wanted power, wealth, and, above all, power. By chance, he had become the Silver Dragon Elder's lackey on the Xuanhuan continent, and had been working for him in secret. But as time passed, he realized that the Silver Dragon Elder couldn't give him what he wanted, and so he began to have second thoughts. Power, wealth, and strength. Strength depended on diligence and talent and could not be forced. He already had wealth, so all that was left was power. If the Silver Dragon Elder couldn't give it to him, he wanted to obtain it himself. This time, Dong Tieha could tell that Li Qianyuan had been feeling uneasy ever since Li Mo's return, so he had come up with this idea. Unexpectedly, Li Qianyuan, who had always been cautious, had actually accepted his suggestion. Now that Li Qianyuan had been killed, his grandson Li Qianyue was the best candidate for the throne. As Li Qianyue's maternal grandfather, wasn't he the true emperor? On one hand, Dong Tieha had used the name of the Silver Dragon Elder to kidnap Yin Ruoyan and Li Mo's child, and on the other, he had used Li Mo's anger to get him to kill Li Qianyuan. Dong Tieha looked at the Silver Dragon ambassador in front of him with a smile on his face. He thought that his technique was superb and no one could see through his true intentions. But he was wrong. In the next second he heard a cold voice from under the silver mask. "Manor Lord Dong, I'm afraid that someone won't let you have your way, haha." The Silver Dragon ambassador's voice had been altered to make it unisex, hoarse and sinister. Anyone who heard it couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. Back in her cottage, Yun Ruoyan gently placed Li Yan in his cradle. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past 2 days, finally relaxed. "It's all because of my negligence that Li Qianyuan was able to take advantage of me," Li Mo replied. "I just didn't expect him to be so bold as to threaten me with the person I care about the most." "There's something fishy about this," Yun Ruoyan commented. "I've interacted with Li Qianyuan a few times, and he doesn't seem like someone who'd lose his cool so easily." In fact, Li Mo had also sensed that something was amiss, but Li Qianyuan had crossed his bottom line. No matter what, Li Mo couldn't spare his life. "Now that you've killed Li Qianyuan, the throne is vacant, and the country can't afford to be without a ruler for even a day. Otherwise, the Li kingdom will fall into chaos and the citizens will suffer. What do you plan to do?" "Help the new emperor," Li Mo replied. "Li Qianyuan stole the throne, and the people didn't approve of him from the start. They only succumbed to his tyranny. If I kill him, the people will surely cheer. Now, all I need to do is help the new emperor ascend the throne, so that the kingdom won't be without a ruler." "So you already have a candidate in mind?" Yun Ruoyan frowned. "It wouldn't be Li Qianhuan, would it?" "That's him." Li Mo looked at Yun Ruoyan. Why do you look like that? Do you think he doesn't have the ability to be emperor?" "Not really," Li Mo replied. "Of course I don't doubt his ability, but given his personality, I'm afraid he wouldn't be willing to be emperor." As far as Yun Ruoyan knew, Li Qianhuan was a very easygoing man. Although he was a prince, the throne had never been his goal. He was close to Li Mo, and he often helped him out, but he wasn't one of Li Mo's subordinates. In short, he was someone who didn't want to be tied down. "That depends on who makes him emperor." Li Mo smiled. "I have my own ways to make him emperor." When Li Qianyuan had initiated the coup, Li Qianhuan had been traveling. By the time he returned, everything had been set in stone. When he had snuck into the palace, he had fallen into Li Qianyuan's trap. In the eyes of others, Li Qianhuan had always been Li Mo's man, and he had never participated in any power struggles, so Li Qianyuan had no intention of taking his life. Li Qianyuan and Li Qianhuan had come to an agreement. Li Qianhuan swore to stay far away from the capital, while Li Qianyuan swore to be a good emperor to the people of the Li kingdom. Then Li Qianhuan left the capital to travel, not even returning when Li Mo returned. What Li Qianhuan hadn't expected was that Li Qianyuan would be bold enough to provoke Li Mo, resulting in his death. This was karma. As soon as Li Qianhuan received Li Mo's letter, he rushed back to the capital. "Uncle, you know me? How can I be the emperor?" When Li Mo asked him to be emperor, his face was full of shock. "You should know me. I'm not cut out for that. No one is born to be emperor. In my opinion, you're the most suitable person to be emperor," Li Mo replied coolly. "If even you can't be emperor, then I'm afraid no one else in the Li family can." "That's right, Qianhuan," Yun Ruoyan chimed in. Yun Ruoyan also chimed in. "The country can't be without a ruler for a single day. Of all the princes, you're the one who cares the most about the commoners suffering. Can you bear to see the commoners pass their days without a ruler to lead them?" Li Qianhuan often traveled abroad, and he knew far more about the suffering of the people than any of the other princes. News of the new emperor's death at the hands of the slaughtering king had spread throughout the kingdom. On his way back, Li Qianhuan had heard the terrified chatter of the people. The kingdom can't go a day without an emperor, or there'll be unrest, Liemo advised. Liemo advised Li Qianhuan earnestly, no matter what, you have to temporarily sit on the throne and intimidate those who are interested. That's the most important thing right now. But Li Qianhuan was still unwilling to give up. In his heart there was only the sun, the moon, the mountains and the rivers. He had never wanted to spend his days trapped in the palace ever since he came of age. Qianhuan, Liemo replied sternly. In my eyes you've always been a man who sees the big picture. Now that the kingdom needs you, you can't disregard the country and its citizens for the sake of your own feelings. How can you face your ancestors if you do so? Li Qianhuan finally relented, and both Yun Ruoyan and Liemo heaved a sigh of relief. While Yun Ruoyan and Liemo were persuading Li Qianhuan, Dong Tiehe wasn't idle either. He was busy contacting the various ministers to pave the way for Li Qianyue to ascend to the throne. The Yuelu villa was rich and overbearing, so they took out a huge sum of money to bribe the various ministers. Indeed, many of them agreed to it verbally, but it was all in vain. In one of the more prosperous parts of the capital there was a large manor. From the outside, one could see how prosperous it had been in the past, but the door was sealed, and the interior of the manor was desolate. This was the Rong Manor. After the crown prince had been deposed, Rong Tianling had been the first member of the royal family to be implicated, and the Rong Manor had also been confiscated. In the dark of the night, a figure silently appeared in front of the Rong Manor. He tore open the seal on the door and dashed inside. This person walked through the large and desolate manor with familiarity, finally entering a room in the middle of a small courtyard. After entering the house, he took off his black cloak, revealing a silver robe underneath and a silver mask on his face. He hung up the black cloak, and only then did he remove the mask on his face, revealing the cold, scarred face of a woman. This was none other than Rong Yueshan. Rong Yueshan reached into her robes and retrieved her sky-turning mirror, placing it on the table. She made a hand seal, and the image of the silver dragon elder appeared on the surface of the mirror. How did it go? The silver dragon elder asked. Elder, the child had already been captured by Dong Tiehe's men, but Yun Ruoyan and Liemo discovered him in time and snatched him back, Rong Yueshan replied. Each of them is more useless than the last. The silver dragon elder's face was as cold as ice. Dong Tiehe is also useless. First elder, please calm down. Yun Ruoyan and Liemo aren't easy to deal with, Rong Yueshan replied. This isn't the first time I've suffered at their hands either. It's only reasonable that Dong Tiehe isn't a match for either of them. The two of them do have some ability, and with that demonic dragon's help, they'll only become more and more difficult to deal with in the future. The silver dragon elder calmed himself and turned to Rong Yueshan. Are you prepared for such an opponent? You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.